The rooftop party glittered beneath champagne lights and million-dollar deals. But Elena Vaughn, the youngest CEO in Philadelphia's architectural empire, was about to shatter. Victor Hale had just walked through those gilded doors, the man who'd once promised her forever before trying to destroy everything she'd built. Now the Ice Queen was breaking, trembling alone in the shadows, while the city's elite celebrated below. And the only person who noticed? A maintenance man in navy coveralls who'd heard her crying 3 weeks ago when she thought no one was listening. One dance would change everything. But first, let me take you back to where it all began. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you stay until the end, you'll discover why sometimes the most powerful thing in the world isn't a corner office or a 7-figure contract. It's the courage to reach out your hand when someone's falling apart. Hit that like button and let's dive in. The fluorescent lights of Hamilton and Pierce architectural firm hummed their monotonous song at 11:47 p.m., casting sterile white across the 42nd floor executive suites. Liam Carter stood on a stepladder, replacing burnt-out bulbs in the conference room where, earlier that day, men in $1,000 suits had decided the fate of a $60 million downtown development project. His navy coveralls bore the embroidered name Maintenance across the back pocket, not his actual name, just his function. That's how most people in this building saw him. A function, a tool that fixed things. He didn't mind the invisibility most nights. At 32, Liam had learned that being overlooked had its advantages. People spoke freely around him as if his presence didn't register. He'd heard marriage proposals in empty hallways, witnessed breakdown arguments in corner offices, and once watched a junior partner throw a stapler through a window after losing a major client. The building revealed its secrets to him because nobody remembered he was there. But Liam remembered everything. That's what single fathers did. They paid attention, noticed details, tracked patterns. It's how he knew his daughter Mia preferred her sandwiches cut diagonally, that she chewed her bottom lip when worried about school tests, that she still checked under her bed for monsters, even though she'd turned 6 last month. Observation was survival. He climbed down from the ladder, his work boots silent on the imported Italian marble that probably cost more than his annual salary. The executive floor always felt like a museum after hours, beautiful, expensive, and completely lifeless. During business hours, this space buzzed with creative energy and ruthless ambition. Associates pitched designs, partners negotiated contracts, and executives commanded empires. But now, in the deep Philadelphia night, it belonged to Liam and his toolbox. He moved methodically through his rounds. Check the thermostats. The senior partners preferred their offices at exactly 68 degrees. Inspect the water coolers. Mr. Hamilton had complained about warm water last Tuesday. Test the presentation room projectors. There was a board meeting scheduled for 8 a.m. Replace the hand soap in the executive washrooms. Lavender eucalyptus. Because apparently, regular soap wasn't good enough for people who billed $400 an hour. Liam had worked at Hamilton and Pierce for 2 years, ever since the divorce finally went through and he'd needed a second job to cover the medical bills. His ex-wife Sarah had left when Mia was 3, deciding motherhood and marriage were incompatible with her authentic self-expression. The last he'd heard, she was in California doing something involving crystals and meditation retreats. She sent Mia a birthday card sometimes. The night maintenance position paid time and a half and came with health insurance that covered Mia's asthma medications. During the day, Liam worked construction, honest physical labor that left him exhausted but satisfied. The night shift at the firm was supposed to be supplemental income, just until he caught up on the debt. That was 2 years ago. He was still catching up, but the work had rhythm, and Liam appreciated rhythm. Wake at 6, make breakfast. Mia liked chocolate chip pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. Pack her lunch with extra juice boxes because she always shared with Tommy Chen, the quiet kid who forgot his lunch twice a week. Walk her to the bus stop at 7:30. Construction site from 8 to 4. Home by 4:30 to help with homework. Dinner together. No phones, no TV, just conversation. Bedtime stories at 8. Then shower, change into the coveralls, and arrive at Hamilton and Pierce by 10 p.m. 5 nights a week, he cleaned and maintained a building that housed dreams he'd never be invited to dream. "Excuse me?" The voice startled him. Liam spun around, nearly dropping his wrench. Someone was standing in the hallway, a silhouette backlit by the soft glow of the emergency exit sign. Elena Vaughn. Even at midnight, even clearly exhausted, the CEO of Hamilton and Pierce looked like she'd walked out of a magazine spread on power and elegance. She wore a charcoal gray pantsuit that probably cost more than Liam's monthly rent, her dark hair pulled back in a style that was somehow both severe and beautiful. But it was her eyes that always struck him, intelligent, guarded, and tonight rimmed with shadows that spoke of too many sleepless nights. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize anyone was still here," Liam said, taking a reflexive step backward. Maintenance staff weren't supposed to interrupt executives, even after hours, especially after hours. "I should apologize," Elena said, her voice carrying that distinctive precision that made junior associates stand straighter during meetings. "I startled you. I was working late and heard movement." Liam gestured to his toolbox. "Third floor reported flickering lights. Maintenance request came through this afternoon. I can come back if you need privacy." "No, please continue. I'm just—" She paused, and for a moment something flickered across her face. Uncertainty? Vulnerability? It vanished so quickly, Liam might have imagined it. "I'm heading out shortly anyway." But she didn't move. She stood there in the hallway, this woman who commanded board meetings and managed 300 employees, looking somehow lost in her own building. Liam had learned to read people during his years doing maintenance work. You didn't survive in service jobs without developing a sense for when someone needed space and when they needed acknowledgement. Elena Vaughn, he sensed, needed something she'd probably never ask for. "The city looks different from up here at night," he said quietly, nodding toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Philadelphia's glittering skyline. "I sometimes take a minute to just look at it before heading home." Elena turned toward the windows, her reflection ghostly against the darkness beyond. "I forget to look anymore. Everything becomes background noise when you're trying to—" She stopped abruptly, as if remembering who she was talking to. "Stay afloat," Liam finished gently. "I get it." She glanced at him sharply, her professional mask momentarily slipping. For 3 heartbeats, they stood in silence, and Liam saw something he'd never expected to see in Elena Vaughn's eyes. Recognition. As if she'd just realized he was an actual person, not just the invisible man who changed light bulbs. "You have a daughter," Elena said suddenly. It wasn't a question. Liam blinked. "How did you—" "You keep a photo taped inside your toolbox lid. I noticed it once when you were fixing the ventilation in my office. She has your eyes." The fact that Elena Vaughn had noticed anything about him, let alone a photograph inside his toolbox, rendered Liam temporarily speechless. People in this building didn't notice maintenance workers. That was an unspoken rule of corporate architecture. "Mia," he said finally. "She's 6. Loves art class and hates broccoli. Currently convinced she's going to be a veterinarian who specializes in dinosaurs, which I don't have the heart to tell her might be challenging." The smallest smile touched Elena's lips, so brief it was almost imaginary. "Sounds like she has imagination. That's valuable." "She's everything," Liam said simply, the truth of it resonating in his voice. "Every decision I make, every hour I work, it's all for her." Elena's expression shifted into something complicated and tender. "That must be extraordinary, having that kind of purpose, that clarity." "You have purpose," Liam said, surprised by his own boldness. "You run one of the most successful architectural firms in Philadelphia. The magazine article last month called you a visionary." "Articles don't know everything." Elena's voice had gone flat, mechanical. The walls were going back up. "The truth is more complicated." Before Liam could respond, Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and whatever she saw there made her jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "I should go. Thank you for the conversation, Mr. Carter." Liam Carter, but just Liam is fine. "Liam." She tested his name as if it were an unfamiliar word. "I'm Elena." "I know who you are, Ms. Vaughn." "Elena," she corrected softly. "At midnight in empty hallways, I think we can dispense with the formalities." Then she walked away, her heels clicking precisely against the marble, leaving Liam standing alone with his toolbox and the strange sensation that something had just shifted in the carefully organized architecture of his invisible life. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks since that midnight conversation, and Liam had noticed Elena Vaughn in ways he never had before. Not intentionally, He wasn't stalking her or anything creepy like that. But once you really saw someone, truly registered their existence beyond their job title and professional reputation, you couldn't unsee them. And what Liam saw troubled him. He saw the way Elena's shoulders tensed whenever board chairman Marcus Hamilton entered a room, as if she were bracing for impact. He saw how she ate lunch alone at her desk every single day, never joining the executives who laughed over catered Mediterranean in the conference room. He saw the precise mask she wore during morning briefings, the one that said, "I'm in control, I'm confident, I'm untouchable," and how it sometimes slipped for half a second when she thought no one was watching. But mostly, he saw the exhaustion. It lived in the spaces between her perfect posture and polished presentations, in the way she gripped her coffee cup during late afternoon meetings, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright, in the extra moment she took before responding to questions, as if translating her thoughts from some private language of survival into appropriate corporate speech. The building gossip called her the Ice Queen. Liam had heard the whispers in break rooms and hallways, how Elena Vaughn was brilliant but cold, how she'd fired 3 senior partners in her first year as CEO, how she never attended company social events, how she supposedly had no personal life whatsoever. "I heard she made Jennifer Wallace cry during the quarterly review," Sandra from accounting had said last week while Liam fixed the paper jam in the copier. "Just completely tore apart her presentation in front of everyone." "That's because Jennifer's presentation was garbage," Tom from legal had countered. "Vaughn demands excellence. That's why we're number 1 in the region." "Excellence or cruelty," Sandra had muttered. "There's a difference." Liam had said nothing, just cleared the paper jam and moved on. But he'd thought about Jennifer Wallace's presentation. He'd been replacing ceiling tiles in that conference room during the review. Elena hadn't been cruel. She'd been direct, yes. Demanding, absolutely. But she'd also spent 15 minutes after everyone else left helping Jennifer understand where the design approach had failed structurally. Liam had heard her, patient and thorough, treating the junior associate like someone worthy of her time and expertise. Nobody talked about that part. They only remembered the Ice Queen's harsh critique, not the private mentorship that followed. People saw what they wanted to see. They needed Elena Vaughn to be cold and heartless because it made sense of her power. A young woman running a firm full of older men had to be icy and ruthless. The narrative was easier that way, but Liam had learned something different during his 2 years of invisible existence in this building. The people who seemed the strongest were often holding themselves together with nothing but willpower and coffee. 3 nights after that midnight conversation, Liam discovered just how true that was. He was working in the ceiling space above the executive offices. There'd been reports of strange noises in the ventilation system, probably pigeons nesting in the external vents. The crawl space was cramped and hot, insulation making everything itch, but the pay was good and someone had to do it. That's when he heard crying. At first he thought he'd imagined it. The building made 1,000 sounds at night. The groan of settling steel, the whisper of air through ducts, the distant hum of the HVAC system. But then it came again, unmistakable and heartbreaking, the sound of someone trying desperately not to make any sound at all. Liam carefully made his way toward the noise, following it to a ceiling vent directly above one of the executive offices. He knew which one without looking: corner office, southwestern exposure, where Elena Vaughn spent 16 hours a day building an empire. Through the vent slats, he could see her. The Ice Queen sat alone at her massive desk, her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken. All the polish and power had drained away, leaving behind someone who looked young and scared and utterly alone. Liam froze. Every instinct told him to move away, to give her privacy, to forget he'd witnessed this. You didn't intrude on powerful people's private moments. You didn't see them cry. But he couldn't move. Because in that moment, Elena Vaughn reminded him of Mia on the nights when the asthma got bad and the fear crept in. That same desperate attempt to hold everything together while falling apart. That same loneliness of fighting battles nobody else could see. Elena reached for something on her desk, a framed photograph. Liam couldn't see what image it held, but the way she stared at it made his chest ache. Then she set it down carefully, wiped her eyes with precise movements, and rebuilt herself. The mask came back piece by piece, the straight posture, the the controlled breathing. The transformation from broken human to Ice Queen took less than 2 minutes. By the time she left her office 10 minutes later, heels clicking authoritatively across marble, nobody would have guessed that anything had happened. The performance was flawless, but Liam had seen behind the curtain, and he couldn't forget it. Tu vois. Daddy, why do you look sad? Mia's question pulled Liam back to the present. They were sitting at their small kitchen table, the Saturday morning sun streaming through windows that overlooked their modest Philadelphia neighborhood. Pancakes, Mickey Mouse-shaped, as promised, sat on Mia's plate alongside fresh strawberries and the orange juice she preferred with just a little bit of pulp. "I'm not sad, sweetheart," Liam said, forcing brightness into his voice. "Just tired. The night shift ran late yesterday." Mia studied him with those solemn 6-year-old eyes that sometimes seemed to see through every adult deflection. She'd inherited that from him, the ability to notice what others missed. "You should sleep more," she said seriously. "Miss Peterson says sleep is important for growing strong bones. That's probably true for daddies, too." "Miss Peterson is very wise," Liam agreed, cutting into his own pancakes. "How's the art project coming? The one about families?" Mia's face lit up, the instant transformation from concerned child to excited artist. "I'm drawing us. You're really tall in my picture, and I made me holding your hand. And I drew your toolbox because you always have it. And I put stars around everything because you told me once that when you fix broken things, you're making the world a little bit better. So the stars mean making things better." Liam's throat tightened. "I love that, baby. You're going to be an amazing artist." "Or a veterinarian for dinosaurs," Mia reminded him seriously. "I haven't decided yet. Can you have 2 jobs? Like you do?" "You can do anything you want," Liam said, meaning it completely. "The world is full of possibilities." "Is your other job full of possibilities?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "Your night job, at the fancy building. Do they have possibilities there?" Liam considered how to answer. The truth was complicated. Hamilton and Pierce was full of possibilities, just not for people like him. It was full of architectural dreams and creative visions and opportunities to shape city skylines. But those possibilities belonged to the executives and associates, the people who'd gone to the right schools and made the right connections. For Liam, it was just a paycheck and health insurance. Except lately, it had become something else. A place where he'd started noticing Elena Vaughn, where he'd witnessed something true and broken behind all that ice. "Every place has possibilities," he finally said. "Sometimes they're just hidden until you're ready to see them." Mia accepted this wisdom with a solemn nod, then returned to her pancakes with 6-year-old focus. Liam watched her eat, this perfect small human he'd somehow helped create, and felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders. He'd do anything for her. Work 3 jobs if necessary. Stay invisible in buildings full of people who'd never learn his first name. Sacrifice sleep, social life, personal dreams. Whatever it took to give Mia the childhood she deserved. But sometimes, in quiet moments like this, Liam wondered what his own life might have looked like with different choices, different education, different opportunities, different invisible barriers that seemed to separate people like him from people like Elena Vaughn. Then Mia looked up and smiled at him, syrup on her chin, joy in her eyes, and Liam remembered that this was enough. She was enough. Everything else was just background noise. The following Monday night, Liam arrived at Hamilton and Pierce to find the building buzzing with unusual energy for 10 p.m. Security guard James Morrison was actually awake at his desk, which was noteworthy in itself. "Big week," James explained when Liam signed in. "The Riverside Project presentation is Friday, board meeting, major investors, the whole circus. Ms. Vaughn's been here every night until 3 a.m. preparing." Liam felt something twist in his chest. "Every night?" "Every single one. I've been here 12 years, and I've never seen anyone work like she does. It's like she's trying to prove something." James shook his head. "Though I suppose she is. Young woman running a firm full of old men who think they deserve her job? That's a mountain to climb every damn day." Liam took the service elevator to the executive floor, his mind churning. The Riverside Project was Hamilton and Pierce's biggest undertaking, a mixed-use development that would revitalize 3 blocks of downtown Philadelphia. $200 million in construction, 5 years of planning, and Elena's reputation was riding on every architectural decision. The executive floor was lit up like Christmas. Normally by this hour, only emergency lighting remained, but tonight at least 6 offices glowed with activity. Associates hunched over computer screens. Partners reviewed massive presentation boards, and the energy crackled with deadline pressure. Liam moved through his rounds quietly, his invisible status even more pronounced amidst the chaos. Nobody looked up as he checked thermostats and replaced trash bags. Nobody registered his existence as he refilled soap dispensers and adjusted the conference room lighting. He was a ghost in their world. A necessary ghost, maybe, but a ghost nonetheless. Around midnight, the associates started leaving, exhausted young architects heading home to grab a few hours of sleep before returning for another grueling day. The partners left by 1 a.m., still talking about load-bearing structures and zoning regulations as they walked to the elevators. By 1:30 a.m., only one office remained lit. Liam stood in the hallway outside Elena's door, debating. His rounds were finished. He should go home, get some sleep, wake up in 5 hours to make Mia's breakfast. But something held him there, listening to the silence beyond that door. No typing sounds, no phone calls, just silence. He knocked gently. "Come in." Elena's voice sounded different, flat, defeated. Liam pushed open the door and found her standing at the window, staring out at the Philadelphia skyline. The presentation materials were scattered across her desk: architectural renderings, financial projections, environmental impact studies. Everything needed to convince the board that the Riverside project was viable. "I thought everyone had left," Elena said without turning around. "I was just finishing my rounds. Saw your light still on." "The light is always on." She finally turned to face him, and Liam saw the exhaustion etched deep into her features. The Ice Queen had cracks tonight, visible ones. "Do you know what they call me, Liam?" The use of his first name surprised him. "Who?" "Everyone, the board, the associates, probably you." A bitter smile touched her lips. The Ice Queen. Cold, heartless Elena Vaughn, who cares about nothing except winning and profits and proving she deserves to sit in this office. "I don't call you that," Liam said quietly. "Why not? It's accurate enough. I fired 3 partners in my first year. I demand perfection. I don't do company picnics or holiday parties or team-building exercises. I'm exactly what they say I am." "No," Liam said firmly. "You're not." Elena laughed, a sound without humor. "You don't know me. I know you spent 15 minutes helping Jennifer Wallace understand structural design principles after tearing apart her presentation. I know you approved the maintenance budget increase so we could fix the third-floor bathrooms that had been broken for 2 years. I know you come in before everyone else and leave after everyone else, 7 days a week." Liam took a careful step forward. "I know you're exhausted, and I know whatever you're carrying it alone." Something shifted in Elena's expression, surprise melting into something raw and unguarded. "You see too much. Occupational hazard of being invisible. People forget I'm watching." "I don't forget." Elena's voice had dropped to barely a whisper. "I notice you, Liam Carter. I notice how you check on things that aren't in your job description, how you remember preferences. Marcus likes his office cold. Jennifer needs better desk lighting. Tom's coffee machine makes that weird noise he can't stand. You care about details because you care about people. That's rare in this building. That's rare anywhere." Liam didn't know what to say. The conversation had veered into territory that felt dangerous and electric and completely unexpected. "The Riverside presentation," he finally said, gesturing to the scattered materials. "Are you worried about Friday?" Elena turned back to the window. "The design is perfect. The numbers work. The environmental impact is minimal. On paper, it's everything the board wants." She paused. "But there's going to be opposition. There's always opposition when you're a young woman telling powerful men what to build." "Marcus Hamilton?" "Among others. He brought me in as CEO 3 years ago when the firm was struggling. I stabilized us, brought in major clients, increased revenue by 40%. But he regrets that decision now. He thought I'd be easy to control. A brilliant architect who'd do the creative work while he maintained real power." Elena's reflection in the window looked ghostly and tired. "Instead, I actually lead. I make decisions. I don't ask permission. and he hates it. Can he remove you? With enough board support, yes, that's what Friday is really about. It's not just presenting the Riverside project, it's proving I deserve to stay in this office. Again, for the 100th time, she pressed her forehead against the cool glass. I'm so tired of proving myself. Liam understood that exhaustion bone deep. Different context, different world, but the same fundamental weariness of fighting invisible battles every single day. I can't pretend to understand corporate politics, he said carefully, but I know what it's like to feel like you're always one mistake away from losing everything. When you're a single parent, that fear never goes away. Every decision matters because if you fail, you're not just failing yourself, you're failing someone who depends on you completely. Elena turned to face him fully. Mia depends on you. She's my whole world. What happened with her mother, if you don't mind my asking? Liam had told this story before, to doctors during Mia's hospital visits, to his construction boss when explaining why he needed flexible hours, to his own reflection late at night when the loneliness got heavy. But telling Elena Vaughn felt different, more vulnerable somehow. Sarah and I got married young, too young probably. We had different ideas about what life should look like. When Mia was born with some health complications, nothing serious, just asthma that needed management, Sarah decided motherhood wasn't compatible with her journey of self-discovery. The old anger had faded, leaving behind only weary acceptance. She left when Mia was 3, signed over full custody, moved to California, sends a birthday card when she remembers. That was 4 years ago. I'm sorry, Elena said, and the sympathy in her voice sounded genuine. That must have been devastating. It was. But you know what I learned? Sometimes the people who leave do you a favor. They show you what real love looks like by demonstrating what it isn't. Sarah leaving meant I got to build a real relationship with my daughter. I got to be the parent who shows up, who pays attention, who makes Mickey Mouse pancakes on Saturday mornings. That's a gift, even if it came wrapped in pain. Elena stared at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're an optimist. I'm a realist who chooses hope. There's a difference. Teach me, Elena whispered. Teach me how to do that. The request hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest and completely unexpected. Before Liam could respond, Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her entire body went rigid. I need to go, she said abruptly, the walls slamming back into place with practiced efficiency. Thank you for the conversation, Liam. I'll see you around. She grabbed her bag and coat with mechanical precision, transforming back into the Ice Queen in seconds. But Liam had seen her face when she looked at that phone. He'd seen fear. Elena? He called as she reached the door. She paused but didn't turn around. Whatever you're dealing with, you don't have to face it alone. I know I'm just the maintenance guy, but if you ever need someone to talk to, you're not just anything, Elena said softly. Then she walked away, leaving Liam standing in her office, surrounded by architectural dreams and the lingering scent of her perfume. He didn't see her again for 3 days, but he thought about that conversation constantly, the cracks in her armor, the exhaustion in her eyes, the fear that flashed across her face when her phone buzzed. Something was wrong. Something beyond board politics and corporate pressure. And Liam couldn't shake the feeling that Elena Vaughn was running out of strength to hold herself together. Friday arrived with the weight of judgment. The Riverside project presentation was scheduled for 6 p.m. in the main conference hall, late enough that investors could attend after market close, early enough that the board couldn't claim schedule conflicts. Liam wasn't supposed to be there. Maintenance staff didn't attend executive presentations, but he'd volunteered to be on call that evening, telling his supervisor that the HVAC system had been acting temperamental and needed monitoring during high-occupancy events. It wasn't a complete lie. The system did need monitoring, but mostly, Liam wanted to be nearby, just in case. He positioned himself in the maintenance room adjacent to the conference hall, where a small window gave him a partial view of the proceedings. The room filled quickly. Board members, investors, city officials, and representatives from the construction companies who'd bid on the project. Elena stood at the front, perfectly composed in a navy suit that conveyed both authority and sophistication. She commanded the room with quiet confidence, her presentation moving through financial projections, architectural innovations, and community impact studies with practiced precision. Liam watched the board members' faces. Some looked impressed. Some looked skeptical. Marcus Hamilton looked predatory, like a shark circling wounded prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The presentation itself was flawless. Elena demonstrated how the Riverside Project would create jobs, revitalize neglected neighborhoods, and position Hamilton and Pierce as a leader in sustainable urban development. The numbers were solid, the design was brilliant, and the environmental considerations were comprehensive. But Liam could see the tension in Elena's shoulders, could see the extra moment she took before answering certain questions, could see the careful control required to maintain her composure while powerful men scrutinized every word. Then Marcus Hamilton struck. "Impressive presentation, Ms. Vaughn," he said, his voice carrying false warmth. "Though I notice you've made some significant changes from the initial proposal we approved 6 months ago. The community green space has doubled in size, which cuts into profitable retail square footage. Can you explain that decision?" "The community space is what makes this project valuable long-term," Elena responded evenly. "We're not just building a shopping center, we're creating a neighborhood hub that reduces our profit margin by 18%, Hamilton interrupted. "I'm sure your idealism is admirable, but we have investors who expect returns. This firm isn't a charity." Several board members nodded. Liam saw Elena's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "The reduced short-term profit is offset by long-term community investment," she countered. "Neighborhoods with accessible green space see increased property values, reduced crime rates, and stronger community bonds. That makes our development more valuable over time, which is speculation," another board member cut in. "We deal in concrete returns, not optimistic projections about community feelings." The questions continued, each one designed to undermine Elena's authority and judgment. They praised her technical skills while questioning her business acumen. They acknowledged her vision while dismissing her practical decisions. It was a masterclass in professional sabotage, death by 1,000 courteous cuts. Elena held her ground, answering each challenge with facts and data, but Liam could see the toll it took, could see her exhaustion deepening with every skeptical question and dismissive response. Then someone new entered the conference room. Liam didn't recognize him at first. Just another man in an expensive suit, late 30s, conventionally handsome in that polished corporate way. But he recognized Elena's reaction. The way her face went pale. The way her hands, previously steady, trembled slightly before she clasped them behind her back. The way her entire body language screamed danger. "Victor Hale," Marcus Hamilton said warmly, standing to shake the newcomer's hand. "Glad you could join us. Everyone, Victor is a development consultant I've asked to review the Riverside Project. He has extensive experience with mixed-use developments, and I thought we could benefit from his outside perspective." Victor Hale smiled, charming and professional and completely poisonous. "Thank you for having me, Marcus. I'm eager to hear more about Elena's vision for this project." He turned that smile directly on her. "Hello, Elena. It's been a while." "Mr. Hale," Elena said, her voice stripped of all emotion. "I wasn't aware you'd be joining us." "Last-minute addition," Marcus said cheerfully. "Victor and I go way back. When I told him about the Riverside Project, he was very interested in providing his expertise." Liam didn't need supernatural intuition to understand what was happening. This was an ambush. Hamilton had brought in someone specifically designed to undermine Elena, someone who clearly had personal history with her. And from the look on Elena's face, that history was painful. The presentation continued, but the energy had shifted. Victor Hale asked pointed questions that felt more like attacks. He praised certain elements while subtly suggesting Elena had stolen ideas from industry standards he'd seen elsewhere. He complimented her passion while implying she lacked the hard business sense for executive leadership. It was professional character assassination dressed up as constructive feedback. Elena handled it with impressive control, never letting her composure crack publicly. But Liam saw what it cost her, saw the way she gripped the presentation remote, saw the extra breath she took before responding to Victor's needling questions, saw the Ice Queen holding herself together through sheer force of will. The presentation finally ended with polite applause, the kind that meant nothing. Marcus Hamilton thanked everyone for attending and suggested they continue discussions at the rooftop reception that evening. It was framed as celebration, but Liam knew better. It was another arena, another test. As people filed out, Liam saw Victor approach Elena. He couldn't hear their conversation through the glass, but he saw Elena's body language, the rigid posture, the stepped-back distance, the protective arms crossed over her chest. He saw Victor say something that made Elena's professional mask finally crack. Just for a second, just long enough for Liam to see the fear and pain beneath. Then she walked away, heading for the elevator with mechanical precision. Victor watched her go, that poisonous smile still playing at his lips. And Liam made a decision. He didn't know what Elena Vaughn was running from. Didn't know what history connected her to Victor Hale. Didn't know how he could possibly help someone so far above his pay grade and social sphere. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't going to let her face tonight alone. Whatever happened at that rooftop reception, Elena Vaughn would have at least one person in her corner, even if she didn't know it yet. Even if he was just the invisible maintenance man in navy coveralls. Sometimes the most important thing you could do was simply refuse to look away when someone was falling apart. And Liam Carter had never been good at looking away. The rooftop of Hamilton and Pierce had been transformed into something from a luxury magazine spread. String lights crisscrossed the open space like captured stars, casting warm amber glows across strategically placed cocktail tables draped in white linen. A jazz quartet occupied the northwest corner, their music floating through the cooling evening air. Waiters in crisp white shirts circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than Liam's hourly wage. He stood in the service corridor behind the rooftop bar, technically on duty monitoring the auxiliary power systems that kept the party lights glowing and the music amplified. His coveralls had been exchanged for the slightly more presentable maintenance uniform, black pants, white shirt with the Hamilton and Pierce logo embroidered on the pocket. Still invisible, but at least appropriately invisible for a corporate event. Through the service door's small window, Liam watched the beautiful people gather. Philadelphia's elite, all sharp suits and designer dresses, expensive watches catching the light as they gestured with champagne flutes. These were the decision makers, the power brokers, the people who shaped city skylines with casual conversations over cocktails. Elena Vaughn moved through them like a dancer executing choreography she'd perfected through years of lonely practice. She'd changed from her presentation suit into a midnight blue dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and armor-like. Her dark hair was down now, falling past her shoulders in waves that softened her features. But her smile remained precisely calibrated, warm enough to be polite, distant enough to discourage intimacy. Liam had seen her deploy that smile dozens of times during his invisible observations. It was a tool, carefully maintained and strategically deployed. It said, "I'm engaged in this conversation," while meaning, "I'm performing the social rituals required of my position." He wondered if anyone else could see the difference. Probably not. Most people only saw what they expected to see. The Ice Queen working the room, cold and controlled and completely untouchable. "Liam, you monitoring those power levels?" The voice crackled through his radio. Jerry, the evening supervisor, checking in from the main maintenance station 2 floors below. Liam keyed his response. "All systems normal. Party's running smooth." "Good. Stay sharp." These executive events always have some emergency. Spilled wine on expensive carpets, temperamental sound systems, someone locking themselves out of the executive washroom. You're our eyes and ears up there. Copy that. Liam returned his attention to the window. Marcus Hamilton held court near the bar, surrounded by board members who laughed too loudly at his mediocre jokes. Victor Hale stood slightly apart, nursing what looked like scotch, while watching the crowd with calculating eyes. Several times, Liam saw those eyes track Elena's movements across the rooftop, a predator watching prey. The thought made Liam's jaw tighten. He didn't know the history between Elena and Victor, but he knew predatory behavior when he saw it. Years of working construction sites and night shifts had taught him to recognize men who viewed other people as obstacles or opportunities rather than human beings. Victor Hale was that kind of man. Everything about him, the casual confidence, the proprietary way he watched Elena, the smug satisfaction playing at his lips, screamed entitlement and control. "Elena, darling, you were magnificent today." A woman in her 50s, dripping in diamonds and condescension, had cornered Elena near one of the cocktail tables. Though I must say all that talk about community spaces seemed a bit idealistic. We're here to make money, aren't we? Community investment creates long-term value, Elena replied, her voice pleasant but firm. Sustainability isn't just environmental, it's social. Projects that serve communities well generate sustained returns. How refreshingly progressive, the woman said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Though I suppose that's your generation. All heart, not enough head for the hard realities of business. Liam saw Elena's fingers tighten almost imperceptibly around her champagne flute. I assure you, Mrs. Patterson, my decisions are based entirely on financial analysis and market research. The hard realities support community-focused development. Of course, dear. I'm sure Marcus will help guide you toward more practical approaches. Mrs. Patterson patted Elena's arm with casual dismissiveness. You're still learning, after all. She drifted away, leaving Elena standing alone at the table. For just a moment, the mask slipped. Liam saw exhaustion and frustration flash across her features before the Ice Queen reassembled herself, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from her dress and fixing her smile back into place. How many times a day did she have to rebuild that armor? How many casual dismissals and subtle insults did she absorb while maintaining perfect composure? The weight of it seemed crushing. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, Marcus Hamilton's voice boomed across the rooftop, amplified by the sound system. The crowd quieted, turning toward where he stood elevated on the small stage area near the jazz quartet. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate the Riverside Project, Hamilton and Pierce's most ambitious undertaking to date. Polite applause rippled through the gathered investors and board members. Our CEO, Elena Vaughn, gave an impressive presentation today showcasing her vision for this development. Marcus gestured toward Elena with practiced magnanimity. Her passion and creativity are undeniable assets to this firm. The phrasing was perfect corporate sabotage. Passion and creativity, qualities associated with youth and inexperience rather than serious business acumen. Liam watched several board members exchange knowing glances. However, Marcus continued, his tone shifting to grave seriousness, a project of this magnitude requires not just vision, but pragmatic business sense, which is why I've asked Victor Hale to join us as a development consultant. Victor brings decades of experience in mixed-use projects and will help ensure that our ambitions align with market realities. More applause, this time more enthusiastic. Victor joined Marcus on the stage, shaking hands while cameras flashed. Investors nodded approvingly. The message was clear. The adults were taking control of the idealistic young woman's impractical dreams. Liam saw Elena standing apart from the crowd, her face carefully blank, but her knuckles had gone white around her champagne flute. Victor will be reviewing all major decisions moving forward, Marcus announced cheerfully, working closely with Elena to optimize our approach. I'm confident this partnership will strengthen the Riverside Project considerably. Partnership. The word dripped with false collaboration. This wasn't partnership, it was demotion dressed up as team building. The crowd began dispersing again, conversations resuming with renewed energy. Liam watched Victor step down from the stage and move directly toward Elena with purposeful strides. She saw him coming. Liam watched her entire body language shift, shoulders squaring, chin lifting, every muscle preparing for confrontation or flight. Elena! Victor's voice carried clearly enough for Liam to hear through the slightly open service door. We should talk. About the project. About working together. There's nothing to discuss, Victor. Elena's voice had gone cold as winter steel. This is Marcus's power play, and we both know it, but I don't report to you. Not yet. Victor's smile was a weapon. But board votes can change things quickly, especially when concerns arise about leadership capability. I've tripled this firm's revenue in 3 years. My leadership capability speaks for itself. Your numbers are impressive, Victor conceded, but leadership isn't just about spreadsheets and design awards. It's about judgment, stability, trustworthiness. He paused, letting the words sink in like poison. Some might question whether you possess those qualities. Given your history, Elena went very still. Don't what? Don't remind the board about your past? About the choices you made? Victor leaned closer, his voice dropping but still audible. I could be an ally, Elena, or I could be honest about what I know. Your call. You don't know anything, Elena said, but her voice had lost some of its steel. Fear had crept in, subtle but unmistakable. I know enough. I know about the clinic in Boston. I know about the sealed records. I know about all the things you've worked so hard to bury. Victor's expression remained pleasant, conversational, as if they were discussing weather or sports rather than wielding threats. These investors, these board members, they value stability and traditional values. How do you think they'd react to certain revelations about their progressive young CEO? Liam felt rage building in his chest. He didn't know what Victor was referencing, didn't understand the specific threat being deployed, but he understood blackmail, understood cruelty disguised as friendly advice. Elena's face had gone pale. What do you want? Your cooperation, your resignation, eventually, but for now, just your cooperation. Victor smiled warmly, as if they'd reached pleasant agreement. Let me guide the Riverside project back to profitability. Stop fighting Marcus, accept that you're out of your depth. Do that, and your secrets stay secret. And if I refuse? Then everyone learns who you really are, what you really are. Victor finished his scotch with casual satisfaction. Think about it, Elena. You've built such a perfect image here, the brilliant young leader, the untouchable ice queen. Shame to see it all crumble over something from your past. He walked away, leaving Elena standing alone near the railing. She gripped the metal bar with both hands, her breathing shallow and rapid. Even from a distance, Liam could see her trembling. He should stay in the service corridor, should maintain his invisible status and let the powerful people handle their powerful people problems. Getting involved would be stupid, reckless, potentially career-ending. But Liam had made himself a promise years ago, sitting in a hospital room while 3-year-old Mia struggled with her first serious asthma attack. He'd promised that he would never be the kind of man who looked away when someone needed help, never be the person who chose comfort over courage. That promise had cost him sleep, savings, social life. But it had also given him something more valuable than any of those things: the ability to look at himself in the mirror and recognize the person staring back. Before he could second-guess himself, Liam pushed through the service door and stepped onto the rooftop. The transformation was immediate. Where moments ago he'd been invisible, now several people glanced his way with confusion or mild annoyance. What was maintenance doing at an executive event? The looks weren't hostile exactly, just dismissive. The way people glanced at furniture that had been placed incorrectly. Liam ignored them, walking directly toward where Elena stood gripping the railing. She didn't notice his approach, too lost in whatever internal battle Victor's threats had triggered. "Ms. Vaughn," Liam said quietly. Elena spun around, startled. Up close, he could see the tear tracks she'd hastily wiped away, the trembling she was fighting to control, the absolute terror barely contained behind her professional mask. "Liam, what are you? You shouldn't be out here. This is a private event." "I'm on duty, monitoring systems." It wasn't entirely a lie. "I saw you standing alone and wanted to check that everything was okay. With the event, I mean. The sound system, the lighting. If there's any technical issues—" "Everything's fine," Elena said automatically, rebuilding her walls with visible effort. "I'm fine. You can go back to—" "You're not fine." The words came out gentle but firm. "I don't know what that man said to you, but I saw your face. And you're not fine." Elena stared at him, surprise breaking through her composure. "You were watching." "I was monitoring. But yes, I saw your conversation with Victor Hale." "Saw enough to know he threatened you with something." Liam took a careful step closer. "I don't need to know what. That's your business. But I do know that you're standing here alone, shaking, trying desperately to hold yourself together while surrounded by people who should be supporting you instead of tearing you down." "That's very observant for someone who's supposed to be invisible," Elena said, attempting lightness but achieving only brittleness. "I see a lot from the shadows. Comes with the job. Then you should also see that this isn't your concern. I appreciate your kindness, but I can handle my own problems." Elena tried to move past him, back toward the party. Liam gently caught her arm. She froze at the contact, and he immediately released her. "Sorry, Elena, you don't have to handle everything alone. I know I'm nobody to you, just the guy who fixes broken lights and cleans the executive bathrooms. But I'm also someone who knows what it's like to feel like you're drowning while everyone watches and assumes you're swimming just fine." You don't understand. Elena's voice cracked slightly. You can't understand what's at stake here. You're right. I don't understand corporate politics or board dynamics or whatever power games Marcus Hamilton is playing, but I understand being afraid. I understand feeling like one wrong move will destroy everything you've built. I felt that way when Sarah left, like I was one mistake away from losing custody of Mia, one bad decision from failing the person who depended on me most. Liam met her eyes steadily. That fear almost paralyzed me. The only thing that saved me was accepting help, admitting I couldn't do it all alone. I don't have help, Elena whispered. Everyone here either wants to control me or remove me. Marcus brought Victor in specifically to undermine my authority. The board questions every decision I make. The associates respect my work, but keep their distance because getting close to the Ice Queen might be career suicide. I've spent 3 years proving I deserve to lead this firm, and it's never enough. It's never. Her voice broke completely. She pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting tears with visible desperation. The party continued around them, oblivious. Jazz music played, people laughed, champagne flowed. The beautiful people performed their beautiful rituals of power and connection, while Elena Vaughn fell apart in plain sight, invisible in her visibility. Liam made a decision that would change everything. Dance with me, he said quietly. Elena blinked, confusion cutting through her distress. What? Dance with me, right here, right now. Liam held out his hand. Sometimes when everything feels impossible, you need to just stop. Breathe. Remember you're human, not just a position or a title or whatever role everyone expects you to play. That's insane. You're maintenance staff. I'm the CEO. We can't just, people will what? Judge you? They're already doing that. Talk about you? That's happening right now. Think less of you? Liam kept his hand extended. Elena, they've already decided who you are. The Ice Queen who doesn't feel anything, doesn't need anyone, exists only to generate revenue and meet expectations. So what do you have to lose by being human for 5 minutes? Elena stared at his outstretched hand as if it were a foreign object. This is inappropriate. Probably, but I'm offering anyway. You could get fired. I've been fired before, survived it. I could... Elena's voice caught. I could lose everything. Maybe, Liam acknowledged. Or maybe you could have one moment where you're not performing, where you're not the Ice Queen or the CEO or Marcus Hamilton's problem to solve, where you're just Elena, dancing with someone who sees you. The vulnerability in her expression was heartbreaking. Why? Why would you risk anything for me? You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're kind to employees even when they disappoint you. I know you work harder than anyone else in this building. I know you cry alone in your office when the weight gets too heavy. And I know that right now you need someone to stand beside you instead of across from you. Liam smiled gently. Plus, my daughter Mia is learning about kindness in school. She asked me yesterday what it means to be a good person. I told her it means helping people who need help, even when it's inconvenient. Especially then. I'd be a hypocrite to teach her that and then walk away from someone who clearly needs help. I don't need... Elena stopped herself. The lie was too obvious to complete. Liam waited, his hand still extended. An invitation, an offering, a small gesture of solidarity in a world that had given her nothing but judgment and isolation. Behind them, the party continued. Liam could feel eyes beginning to notice them. The CEO and the maintenance man standing too close, having an intense conversation that didn't fit the evening's elegant script. Whispers were starting, curiosity rippling through the crowd. Let them whisper. Let them judge. Liam had spent 2 years being invisible, and invisibility had its place. But so did visibility. So did standing up and choosing connection over comfort. Elena's hand trembled as she slowly reached toward his. Their fingers touched, just barely, just enough for Liam to feel how cold her hands were despite the warm evening. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I, Liam admitted. I haven't danced with anyone since Sarah left, but I figure we can stumble through it together. Elena's laugh was broken and beautiful. That's probably the most honest thing anyone said to me in years. She placed her hand fully in his. Liam gently drew her closer, his other hand settling respectfully at her waist. The jazz quartet had shifted to something slow and melancholy, An old standard about lost love and found hope that seemed almost too perfect for the moment. They began to move. It wasn't graceful. Liam's work boots weren't designed for dancing, and Elena's heels made her wobble slightly. But they found a rhythm, simple and honest, swaying together while the city lights of Philadelphia glittered beyond the rooftop edge. "Everyone's staring," Elena murmured against his shoulder. "Let them. Victor's going to use this against me. He'll tell the board I'm unstable, inappropriate, fraternizing with staff. Probably. Marcus will call an emergency meeting, question my judgment. Likely. I could lose my job, my reputation, everything I've worked for. Possibly." Liam pulled back slightly to meet her eyes. "Or you could have this one moment of honesty in a world that demands you lie about who you are every single day. Your call, Elena. I'm not here to make decisions for you, just offering company while you make them yourself." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Why aren't you afraid? You're risking your job too." "I am afraid," Liam said honestly. "Terrified, actually. I've got a 6-year-old daughter who depends on me completely. Losing this job would be devastating. The health insurance, the income, I need both desperately." He tightened his hand slightly at her waist. "But I'm more afraid of becoming the kind of man who walks away, who chooses safety over solidarity. That fear is bigger than losing a job. That fear is about losing myself." "That's the bravest thing I've ever heard," Elena whispered. "It's not bravery. It's just stubbornness. Ask anyone who knows me. I'm terrible at doing the smart thing." Elena laughed again, the sound less broken this time. She rested her forehead against his shoulder, and Liam felt the exact moment she stopped fighting, stopped holding herself rigid against the world's judgment, stopped performing strength and started accepting support. They swayed together in the amber light, and the rooftop party went quiet around them. The conversation stopped. The whispers faded. Even the jazz quartet seemed to soften their playing, as if recognizing something sacred was happening in their midst. Marcus Hamilton stood frozen near the bar, his expression caught between fury and disbelief. Victor Hale watched with calculating eyes, already planning how to weaponize this moment. Board members exchanged shocked glances. Associates pulled out phones to capture evidence of the Ice Queen's unprecedented vulnerability. And Elena Vaughn, brilliant CEO and perpetual fortress, trembled in the arms of a maintenance man and whispered the words that would change everything. "Please don't leave me." The plea was so quiet Liam almost missed it, but he heard the desperation beneath the words, the loneliness that had been building for years until it finally found voice. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. "Not unless you ask me to. Even when this becomes a disaster, when they use this against both of us, even then." "Why?" Elena's voice broke completely. "Why would you stand with me through that?" Liam thought about Mia's question from Saturday morning. Can you have 2 jobs? Can you do more than one thing? His daughter had been asking about careers, but the question applied to identity too. People weren't just one thing. They weren't just maintenance workers or CEOs, single parents or corporate leaders. They were complex and contradictory, capable of surprising themselves with their own capacity for courage. "Because 3 weeks ago, I heard you crying alone in your office," Liam said quietly. "And I realized that the Ice Queen everyone fears is actually just someone who's been carrying impossible weight with no support. Someone who's survived by pretending not to need anyone. Someone who's so damn tired of being strong all the time." He met her eyes steadily. "I can't fix your board problems or neutralize Victor Hale or change corporate politics, but I can stand here with you while you stop pretending for 5 minutes. That seems important enough to risk almost anything." Elena stared at him with an expression that cycled through disbelief, gratitude, fear, and something that might have been hope. "You're either the kindest man I've ever met or the most foolish." "Both, probably. Mia says I make terrible decisions with excellent intentions." "Your daughter sounds wise. She's 6 and believes in dinosaur veterinarians. But yes, surprisingly wise." They kept swaying, and Liam felt Elena's breathing gradually slow from panicked to merely shaky. The simple act of being held seemed to be unknotting something inside her, some terrible tension that had been wound too tight for too long. "I have to tell you something," Elena said suddenly. "About Victor. About what he's threatening me with. You don't owe me explanations. I know, but if you're going to stand with me through whatever's coming, you deserve to know what you're standing beside. Elena took a shaky breath. When I was 24, fresh out of graduate school, I got pregnant. Unplanned, unwanted, terrible timing. I was about to start my career, had student loans drowning me, no support system. The father, Victor, wanted me to have the baby. Not because he cared about being a parent, but because he saw it as leverage, a way to keep me dependent and controllable. Liam kept his expression neutral, letting her tell the story without judgment. I terminated the pregnancy, Elena continued, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. It was the right decision for me at that time in my life. I don't regret it, but I also know that in this world, in these corporate circles, that choice would be weaponized against me. Victor knows that. He knows the board members are conservative, traditional. He knows that revealing my moral failing would give Marcus the ammunition needed to remove me. That's your private medical decision, Liam said firmly. It's nobody's business. It becomes their business if Victor makes it their business. He has documentation, clinic records he somehow acquired. He's been holding this over me for 3 years, ever since I took this position. Every time I push back against Marcus, every time I refuse to be controlled, Victor reminds me that one phone call to the board chairman destroys everything. Elena's voice hardened. That's who I am, Liam. A woman being blackmailed by her ex-partner, performing strength while terrified that my past will detonate my future. Still want to dance with me? Liam didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Elena blinked. You don't care about the abortion? I care that you made the choice you needed to make. I care that someone's using your private medical history as blackmail. I care that you've been carrying this fear alone for 3 years. But do I judge you for making a difficult decision about your own body and future? No. That's not my place. And frankly, anyone who thinks it is can go to hell. A sound escaped Elena that was half laugh, half sob. You're going to get fired for this, for dancing with me, for defending me. Marcus is already planning it. I can see him over your shoulder, talking to board members. Then I'll get fired, but at least I'll sleep tonight knowing I didn't abandon someone who needed support. Your daughter, the health insurance, your income. Liam, I can't live with myself if I walk away right now. That's the calculation that matters. Liam pulled her slightly closer. We'll deal with consequences when they come. Right now, we're just 2 people dancing while the world judges. Let them judge. I've survived worse than rich people's disapproval. I haven't, Elena admitted. Their approval has been my entire life for years. Building the perfect reputation, the untouchable image. If that crumbles, then maybe you'll discover who you are without the armor. Maybe that person is worth knowing. Elena went quiet, and they continued swaying while the night deepened around them. The party had fully stopped now. Nobody even pretended to be having separate conversations. All eyes were on the CEO and the maintenance man, this impossible pairing that defied every social rule and corporate hierarchy. Victor was moving through the crowd, speaking quietly to board members. Liam watched him plant seeds of doubt and scandal, watched him smile his poisonous smile while destroying Elena's reputation with carefully chosen words. He's telling them, Elena whispered, about the pregnancy, about the abortion. I can tell by their faces. Let him tell them. It doesn't change who you are. It changes how they see me. Then they're not worth impressing. Liam, you don't understand. This is my career, my life, everything I've built. I understand perfectly. You built something powerful on a foundation of fear and secrecy. Victor kept you controllable by making you afraid of exposure. But here's the thing about foundations built on fear. They're already crumbling. You've just been working so hard to hold them together that you haven't noticed. Liam met her eyes steadily. Maybe this exposure is actually freedom. Maybe losing their approval means gaining yourself back. Elena shook her head. That's a beautiful thought. But in the real world, exposure means destruction. In the real world, secrets have power only when you're afraid of them. The moment you stop caring what people think about your past, Victor loses his leverage. Easy to say, harder to live. Everything worth doing is hard, trust me. I know. Liam thought about the night Sarah left, the moment he'd realized he was going to raise Mia alone. The terror had been overwhelming, but so had the freedom of no longer pretending their marriage worked. Sometimes destruction is necessary before rebuilding. Sometimes you have to let the old version of yourself burn before the real you can emerge. Philosophical wisdom from a maintenance man, Elena said, but there was warmth in her voice now. I prefer profound observations from someone who survived his own disasters. They kept dancing, and slowly, impossibly, Liam felt Elena begin to relax. Her breathing steadied, her tears slowed. The trembling subsided into something resembling calm. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder, "for seeing me, for standing with me, for not running when I showed you how broken I am. You're not broken. You're human. There's a difference." The music was ending. The moment couldn't last forever. Soon they'd have to face the consequences of this public vulnerability, the whispers, the judgment, the professional fallout. But for now, they had this: the quiet space between songs, the gentle pressure of hands holding steady, the radical act of two people refusing to be invisible in a world that demanded their disappearance. And when the music finally stopped, when they stepped apart and faced the crowd of shocked executives and calculating board members, Liam saw something new in Elena's eyes. Not ice, not fear. Defiance. The defiance in Elena's eyes lasted exactly 4 seconds before Marcus Hamilton's voice cut through the stunned silence like a blade through silk. "Elena, a word, now." His tone carried the weight of executive authority and barely concealed fury. In private, the rooftop crowd parted automatically, creating a pathway between Marcus and where Elena stood beside Liam. Every face turned toward them reflected some combination of shock, fascination, or predatory satisfaction. This was the moment they'd all been waiting for. The Ice Queen's fall from grace, captured in real time beneath string lights and champagne bubbles. Elena's hand tightened briefly on Liam's arm before she released him. The defiance flickered, threatened to extinguish entirely, then steadied into something harder and more permanent. She lifted her chin with deliberate precision. "Anything you need to say to me can be said here, Marcus. I'm done with private conversations that somehow become public knowledge within hours." Marcus's jaw clenched. Several board members exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. Elena Vaughn didn't challenge Marcus Hamilton publicly. The Ice Queen maintained appearances, played the corporate game with cold efficiency. Except she wasn't playing anymore. "Fine." Marcus's smile was all sharp edges and calculated cruelty. "Then let me be direct. Your behavior tonight has been completely inappropriate. Dancing with maintenance staff during a professional event? Making a spectacle of yourself in front of investors and board members?" He gestured broadly at the assembled crowd. "This is exactly the kind of erratic judgment that concerns us about your leadership." "Erratic judgment," Elena repeated, her voice dangerously calm. "Is that what we're calling basic human connection now? I danced with someone. That's not a scandal, Marcus. That's not even newsworthy." "You danced with an employee," Victor Hale interjected smoothly, stepping forward from where he'd been lurking in the crowd. "During a critical business event, while representing this firm to major investors. That shows profound lack of professional boundaries." "Professional boundaries," Elena said, and Liam heard the razor edge beneath her composure. "Like the professional boundaries you've maintained, Victor? Blackmailing me for 3 years with stolen medical records? Those kinds of boundaries?" The rooftop went absolutely silent. Even the jazz quartet had stopped playing, their instruments frozen mid-note as if the world itself had paused to witness what happened next. Victor's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation, then manufactured confusion. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Elena. Are you feeling all right? The stress of the presentation, perhaps?" "Don't!" Elena's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare gaslight me in front of everyone. You've spent 3 years holding my past over my head like a guillotine blade. Every time I made a decision you or Marcus disagreed with, you'd remind me about the clinic in Boston, about the choice I made when I was 24, about how the conservative board members would react if they knew the truth about their progressive young CEO. Liam watched Victor's face carefully. The man was good. His expression of wounded innocence was nearly perfect. But there, in the tightness around his eyes, the slight tension in his shoulders, was the truth. Everything Elena had said was accurate, and Victor knew the game had just changed fundamentally. "Elena, these are serious accusations," Marcus said, his voice taking on a tone of concerned paternalism. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere private where you can rest and I'm not having a breakdown, Marcus. I'm having a breakthrough. Elena turned to face the full crowd of executives, investors, and board members. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. You want to know who I really am? Fine. Let me tell you. Elena, don't. It was Margaret Chen, one of the few female board members, her voice carrying genuine concern. Whatever you're about to say, think carefully. Some things can't be unsaid. I'm tired of carefully considering every word. I'm exhausted from performing perfection. Elena's eyes swept across the assembled crowd. When I was 24, I got pregnant. The father was Victor Hale, who I was dating at the time. I chose to terminate that pregnancy because I wasn't ready to be a mother, because I had career goals that mattered to me, because it was my body and my future and my choice. The words landed like grenades. Liam saw faces contort with shock, disgust, sympathy, calculation. Mrs. Patterson's diamond-laden hand flew to her chest in theatrical horror. Several board members looked away uncomfortably. Two of the younger associates nodded almost imperceptibly, their expressions sympathetic. Victor obtained my medical records illegally, Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. He's been using them as leverage for 3 years. Every time I pushed back against Marcus's attempts to undermine my authority, Victor would remind me what revelation would cost. Every time I made decisions that prioritized long-term community value over short-term profits, I'd receive a text message with clinic addresses and veiled threats. This is slander, Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction. I've never threatened you. You have a folder on your laptop labeled insurance. I've seen it. You showed it to me 6 months ago when I refused to back your proposal to cut the affordable housing component from the Riverside project. Elena's eyes locked on Victor with laser focus. You told me insurance policies were important because you never knew when accidents might happen. Then you asked if I'd considered how an accident involving my medical history becoming public would affect my career. Victor's carefully maintained composure cracked. You have no proof of that conversation. No, I don't, but I also don't care anymore. Elena turned back to the crowd. I spent 3 years being terrified of exposure. 3 years building this perfect image of the Ice Queen, cold, controlled, untouchable. 3 years believing that if any of you discovered I was human, with human complications and human mistakes, you'd destroy me. Elena, please stop. Margaret Chen's voice was gentle but urgent. You're destroying yourself. No, Elena said firmly. I'm freeing myself. There's a difference. Liam stood frozen, watching this woman systematically dismantle the armor she'd spent years constructing. Part of him wanted to intervene, to protect her from the consequences of this radical honesty. But another part, the part that understood what it meant to finally stop pretending, knew that interrupting would be a betrayal. This was Elena's moment, her choice, her liberation, even if it looked like self-destruction to everyone watching. Marcus Hamilton had recovered from his initial shock and was moving into damage control mode. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're all witnessing someone under extreme stress. Elena has been working impossible hours on the Riverside project, and clearly the pressure has become, "Don't you dare diminish this as stress," Elena interrupted, rounding on him with sudden fury. "I'm not having a breakdown, Marcus. I'm having the first honest moment of my entire tenure as CEO. You brought me in 3 years ago because the firm was failing. You needed my architectural vision and my work ethic and my ability to win clients. But you never wanted me to actually lead. You wanted a talented puppet you could control. That's absurd. I've supported your leadership from day one." "You've undermined me from day one," Elena shot back, questioning my decisions in front of associates, excluding me from critical meetings with major clients, bringing in Victor as a consultant specifically to diminish my authority. Every single move you've made has been designed to remind me and everyone else that I'm CEO in title only. That real power still belongs to you." Marcus's face had gone red. "I've tried to mentor you, to help you understand the realities of running a firm this size. But you're too proud, too stubborn, too female." Elena's voice was ice again, but now it was ice with purpose. "Let's be honest, Marcus. If I were a man, you'd call my stubbornness leadership. You'd praise my pride as confidence. But because I'm a young woman who doesn't defer to your wisdom and experience, I'm difficult, I'm erratic, I'm in need of male guidance." "Now you're being ridiculous." But Marcus's bluster had weakened. Several people in the crowd were nodding, their expressions thoughtful. Liam realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. Elena wasn't just defending herself, she was systematically exposing the power dynamics that had kept her trapped. Every word was a surgical strike against the infrastructure of control and manipulation. "I've tripled this firm's revenue in 3 years," Elena continued, her voice steady and factual. "I've won awards for sustainable design. I've brought in clients who specifically requested to work with me because of my reputation for innovation. But none of that matters, does it? Because I also made choices in my personal life that don't align with your traditional values. I also refuse to be controlled. I also had the audacity to think I deserved actual authority, not just a fancy title. Elena, I must insist you stop this immediately." Marcus's voice had shifted to barely controlled rage. "You're embarrassing yourself and this firm." "I'm telling the truth. If that's embarrassing, perhaps the problem isn't my honesty." Victor had been silent during this exchange, but now he stepped forward with calculated concern. "Elena, I think you need to consider what you're sacrificing here. Your career, your reputation, everything you've worked for. Is this really worth destroying over a dance with someone completely inappropriate?" Elena turned to face him, and Liam saw something in her expression that made his chest tighten. Not fear, not even anger, something closer to pity. "You really don't understand, do you?" she said quietly. "You think this is about the dance, about Liam, but it's not. It's about finally understanding that your leverage only worked because I gave it power. Because I believed that my worth was determined by your approval and the board's acceptance and maintaining this perfect image. Your worth is determined by your performance," Victor said, "by your ability to lead this firm effectively, and tonight you've demonstrated profound failure in judgment." "No," Elena said. "Tonight I've demonstrated that I'm human, that I have a past and make mistakes, and sometimes need support instead of isolation. If that's grounds for removal, then remove me. But you'll be removing someone who actually cares about this firm and its future, not just its profit margins." She turned to the assembled crowd, many of whom were still watching with expressions of shock and fascination. "I know what most of you are thinking, that I've just committed professional suicide, that admitting weakness and vulnerability is incompatible with leadership, that revealing my past makes me unfit to guide this firm." The silence was profound. Even the city sounds from far below seemed muted, as if Philadelphia itself was holding its breath. "But I'm going to tell you something revolutionary," Elena continued. "Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's not about maintaining an untouchable image or pretending you don't have human needs and human complications. Real leadership is about vision, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what matters even when it costs you everything." "Beautiful speech," Marcus said coldly. "But speeches don't run firms. Results do. And your results tonight have been catastrophic." "Have they?" Elena's voice took on a new quality, challenging, almost playful. "Let me ask you something, Marcus. What's the one thing you and Victor and everyone else keep saying this firm values above all else?" Marcus frowned, suspicious of the trap. "Profitability." "Wrong. Stability." Elena smiled without warmth. "You value stability, predictability, the illusion of control. That's why you hate me. Not because I'm incompetent or erratic or failing to generate revenue, but because I represent change. I represent a future where leadership looks different, where values beyond profit matter, where perfection isn't a prerequisite for authority." "This is philosophical nonsense," Victor interjected. "The board wants results, not theories about leadership." "Then let's talk about results." Elena pulled her phone from her clutch with deliberate precision. "I received an email 20 minutes ago from David Morrison, CEO of Morrison Development Group. He's been observing tonight's events with great interest." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Morrison Development was Hamilton and Pierce's largest potential client, a partnership that could mean hundreds of millions in revenue. Elena began reading from her phone. Quote, "Ms. Vaughn, I've spent the evening watching how you handle pressure, opposition, and personal attacks. I've seen your presentation, reviewed your Riverside project designs, and observed how people in your own firm treat you. I want you to know that Morrison Development would be honored to work with someone of your integrity and vision. If your current situation becomes untenable, my firm would welcome your leadership. We believe the future of architecture requires exactly the kind of courage you've demonstrated tonight." End quote. The rooftop erupted into whispers. Liam watched Marcus's face cycle through shock, rage, and calculation. This changed everything. If Elena had external offers from firms like Morrison Development, removing her became significantly more complicated. "He's offering you a position?" Margaret Chen asked, her voice carefully neutral. "He's offering me a partnership," Elena corrected, "and creative control over their entire sustainable development division. It's the kind of opportunity most architects spend careers hoping for." "Then take it," Marcus said quickly, too quickly. "If you're so unhappy here, if you feel so undermined and controlled, then leave. Accept Morrison's generous offer and let this firm move forward with leadership that understands loyalty." "Loyalty," Elena repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "You mean obedience? You mean silence in the face of manipulation? You mean accepting blackmail and control because challenging it would be disloyal?" "I mean supporting the firm that gave you this opportunity in the first place," Marcus said. "But clearly gratitude isn't something you value." Liam had stayed silent throughout this entire confrontation, recognizing that his voice carried no weight in this corporate battle. But now he saw Elena's shoulders begin to curve inward, saw exhaustion threatening to collapse her newfound defiance. She'd been fighting alone for so long, and even the strongest person had limits. He stepped forward, not beside Elena exactly, that would be presumptuous, but slightly closer, a visible declaration of solidarity. Marcus noticed immediately. "Mr. Carter, I don't recall anyone asking for your input. In fact, I think it's time you returned to your actual job, or better yet, collected your things. Your employment here is terminated effective immediately." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Liam felt the impact in his chest, the health insurance, the income, the stability that Mia depended on, all gone with a single sentence from a powerful man who saw him as nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle. "No," Elena's voice cut through Liam's panic. "You don't get to fire him, Marcus. Staffing decisions for maintenance and facilities report to operations, not to you directly. I'm the board chairman. I can fire anyone I want." "Actually, you can't. That's not how our corporate structure works. You know that as well as I do." Elena's voice had shifted back to cold precision, the Ice Queen returning, but now with purpose rather than protection. "You can recommend termination to operations, but the final decision requires documentation of cause. And I don't think danced with the CEO during a company event constitutes valid cause for termination. He was inappropriate. He overstepped boundaries." "He was kind," Elena said simply. "He saw another human being struggling and offered support. If that's grounds for firing people, then this firm has far bigger problems than my judgment." Marcus and Elena stared at each other, the power dynamic suddenly visible to everyone watching. This wasn't just about Liam's employment or Elena's dance. This was about control. Who had it? Who deserved it? Who was willing to fight for it? "This conversation is over," Marcus finally said. "We'll continue discussions about your future at an emergency board meeting Monday morning. I suggest you spend the weekend considering whether Hamilton and Pierce is really where you want to be." "I suggest you spend it considering whether removing me would actually serve this firm's interests," Elena countered. "Because I promise you, Marcus, if I leave, it won't be quietly. Every client I've brought in, every innovation I've introduced, every reason this firm is currently succeeding instead of failing, I'll take that knowledge and experience to Morrison Development and will become your fiercest competition." It was a declaration of war disguised as a farewell speech. The rooftop crowd murmured with renewed energy. This was better than any corporate drama they could have imagined. Victor stepped forward one final time, his expression shifting to something that might have been genuine emotion. "Elena, it doesn't have to be like this. You're burning bridges that took years to build. For what? Your pride? A dance with someone who means nothing?" "He means something to me," Elena said quietly. "More than you ever did. More than your approval or Marcus's authority or this entire firm's reputation." She looked at Liam directly. "He saw me, actually saw me. Not the performance, or the title, or the image. That's worth more than all the partnerships and corner offices in Philadelphia. Liam's throat tightened. He wanted to respond, to articulate what Elena's courage meant to him. But before he could find words, Elena was moving, walking away from Marcus and Victor and the assembled crowd, heading toward the rooftop exit with steady, purposeful strides. She paused when she reached Liam, her eyes meeting his with unexpected warmth. "Thank you. For the dance. For standing with me when you had every reason to walk away." "Elena," Liam started. "I need to go," she said softly. "Before I say something that crosses from honest into career obliterating. But I meant what I said. You saw me when I'd forgotten how to see myself. That gift is precious beyond measure." Then she was gone, disappearing through the rooftop door, leaving behind a crowd of shocked executives and a maintenance man whose entire world had just been rearranged by a 5-minute dance. The party dissolved rapidly after that. Investors made polite excuses and departed. Board members clustered in tight groups, whispering urgently about Monday's emergency meeting. Associates fled before they could be associated with the evening's scandal. Within 30 minutes, the rooftop was nearly empty, except for catering staff cleaning up champagne flutes and Marcus Hamilton standing at the railing, staring out at the city with an expression of cold calculation. Liam made his way back toward the service entrance, his mind racing. He'd been fired, or almost fired. Elena had prevented it, but how long could that protection last? And what happened Monday when the board met to decide her fate? "Mr. Carter." The voice made Liam turn. Margaret Chen stood a few feet away, her expression thoughtful. "That was quite a display of solidarity." "I didn't mean to cause problems," Liam said carefully. "I'm sure you didn't, but you did. For Elena and for yourself." Margaret studied him with sharp eyes. "Can I ask why? Why risk your job for someone you barely know?" Liam considered his answer carefully. "My daughter asked me recently what it means to be a good person. I told her it means helping people who need help, even when it's inconvenient or risky. Seemed hypocritical to teach her that principle and then ignore it when it actually mattered." Margaret smiled slightly. "Your daughter sounds like she has a good father." "I try." "Elena doesn't have many allies on the board," Margaret said quietly. "Marcus has been building his coalition for months, waiting for an opportunity to remove her. Tonight gave him exactly what he needed: evidence of erratic judgment, inappropriate behavior, unstable leadership." "She's not unstable. She's exhausted from fighting battles alone." "I know. I've watched her struggle for 3 years trying to prove she deserves a position that should never have required proof in the first place." Margaret's expression was sad. "But knowing the truth doesn't change the political reality. Marcus has the votes to remove her. Monday's meeting is essentially a formality." The words settled in Liam's chest like stones. "So that's it? She loses everything because she was honest about her past and danced with the wrong person?" "That's how corporate power works, Mr. Carter. It punishes honesty and vulnerability while rewarding performance and pretense." Margaret glanced back toward where Marcus still stood at the railing. "I'll vote against removal, but I'm only one vote among 12. The mathematics are not in Elena's favor." "Then the mathematics are wrong." Margaret laughed softly. Spoken like someone who hasn't spent 30 years navigating corporate politics. But I appreciate the sentiment. She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, what you did tonight mattered. Not politically, not strategically, but humanly. Elena needed someone to stand beside her when everyone else was calculating how to benefit from her downfall. You did that. It won't save her position, but it might save her faith in people." She walked away, leaving Liam alone in the service corridor with the weight of impossible questions and no clear answers. He should go home, wake Mia in the morning with Mickey Mouse pancakes and pretend everything was fine. Start searching for new jobs over the weekend, updating his resume and calling contacts from his construction work. Return to the careful, invisible life he'd built where survival mattered more than solidarity. But Liam couldn't shake the image of Elena walking away, shoulders straight, head high, carrying the weight of her honesty like armor instead of burden. She'd chosen truth over safety tonight, had stood in front of people who could destroy her career and refused to apologize for being human. That kind of courage deserved more than abandonment. Liam pulled out his phone and composed a text message before he could second-guess himself. He didn't have Elena's personal number, but the firm directory included email addresses. He sent a short message to her company account, knowing she probably checked it obsessively, even on Friday nights. You're not alone in this. Whatever happens Monday, you have someone standing with you. Liam. He hit send before courage could fail him, then gathered his tools and headed home to his daughter and the uncertain future that stretched ahead like a darkened highway with no visible landmarks. Somewhere in Philadelphia, Elena Vaughn was probably sitting in her expensive apartment, processing the wreckage of her carefully constructed life. And somewhere in the same city, powerful men were planning how to capitalize on her vulnerability. But for one night, for 5 minutes on a rooftop beneath string lights and judgment, the Ice Queen had melted, had danced with someone who saw her humanity instead of her utility, had chosen connection over control. And that choice, Liam suspected, would change everything for both of them in ways neither could yet predict. The weekend stretched ahead, heavy with anticipation and dread. Monday's board meeting would determine Elena's professional fate, but tonight had already determined something more important, the person she was willing to become when all the armor finally fell away. Liam drove home through quiet Philadelphia streets, thinking about courage and consequences, about his daughter who believed in dinosaur veterinarians, and the CEO who'd finally stopped believing in perfect performances. Whatever came next, he'd meant what he'd texted. Elena wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he. Elena's apartment was dark when she arrived home, the city lights filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric shadows across expensive furniture that suddenly felt like relics from someone else's life. She kicked off her heels and stood barefoot on cold hardwood, still wearing the midnight blue dress that had witnessed her professional unraveling. Her phone buzzed. Another message in the flood that had started the moment she'd left the rooftop. Board members expressing concern, associates pretending sympathy while distancing themselves, competitors smelling blood in the water. She'd stopped reading them an hour ago, letting the notifications pile up like digital debris from an explosion. But this message was different. The sender made her pause. You're not alone in this. Whatever happens Monday, you have someone standing with you. Liam. Elena read it 3 times, her throat tightening with each pass. 7 years of architecture school, 5 years climbing corporate ladders, 3 years running Hamilton and Pierce, and the most meaningful support she'd received had come from a maintenance worker she'd known for 3 weeks. The irony was almost beautiful in its cruelty. She typed and deleted 4 different responses before settling on simple honesty. Thank you. That means more than you know. I'm sorry you got pulled into this disaster. You didn't deserve to be collateral damage in my meltdown. His response came within seconds. Not a meltdown. A breakthrough. And I chose to stand beside you. That's not collateral damage. That's deliberate solidarity. Get some sleep, Elena. Monday will come whether we're ready or not. Elena stared at those words until her vision blurred. When had anyone last told her to rest? To take care of herself? The firm demanded constant availability, perpetual readiness, endless performance. Sleep was weakness. Exhaustion was failure. You pushed through until you broke, and then you pushed through the breaking. Except she had broken tonight, spectacularly, publicly, irreversibly. And somehow, standing in her expensive apartment in her designer dress with her career crumbling around her, Elena felt lighter than she had in years. She changed into pajamas, actual comfortable pajamas, not the silk loungewear she usually wore in case she needed to take late-night video calls from international clients. She made tea instead of her usual double espresso. She sat on her couch and stared at the Philadelphia skyline and allowed herself to simply exist without performing strength or competence or icy perfection. For the first time in 3 years, Elena Vaughn was just Elena. Not the CEO, not the Ice Queen, not the brilliant young architect carrying the weight of impossible expectations. Just a woman who'd finally told the truth and survived the telling. Her phone buzzed again. This time, David Morrison from Morrison Development Group. Ms. Vaughn, my offer stands. In fact, after tonight's events, I'm more convinced than ever that you're exactly the kind of leader our firm needs. No pressure, but if Monday's board meeting goes poorly, call me. We'll have an offer letter ready within hours. Elena saved the message, a lifeline for Monday morning. Then she turned off her phone entirely and slept for 10 uninterrupted hours. the first full night's rest she'd had since accepting the CEO position. Across the city, Liam lay awake in his small bedroom, staring at ceiling cracks he'd been meaning to repair for months. Beside him, Mia slept peacefully, having crawled into his bed around midnight with nightmares about school bullies. She'd fallen back asleep within minutes, trusting absolutely in her father's protection. That trust terrified him tonight more than usual. What happened when he couldn't protect her? When his choices, however morally justified, resulted in consequences that hurt them both? He'd checked his bank account before bed. $3,000 in savings. Enough for maybe 2 months of expenses if he was careful. If he lost the Hamilton and Pierce job, he'd need to find replacement income immediately. The construction work alone wasn't enough to cover rent, food, Mia's medications, the endless small expenses of raising a child alone. But even as anxiety churned through his thoughts, Liam couldn't regret his choice. He'd look Mia in the eyes tomorrow morning and know he'd lived up to the values he'd been teaching her. That had to count for something. His phone glowed on the nightstand with Elena's response to his message. He read it again, struck by the vulnerability beneath her words. She'd apologized to him. The CEO of a major firm had apologized to maintenance staff for involving him in her problems. That kind of humility was rare at any level. That it came from someone with Elena's power and position made it extraordinary. Liam typed a final message before trying to sleep. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing what's right even when you're terrified. You demonstrated more courage tonight than most people show in a lifetime. Whatever happens Monday, you didn't fail. You freed yourself. He sent it to her email, knowing her phone was probably off. She'd read it eventually. Maybe it would help. Saturday morning arrived with autumn sunshine and Mia's excited chatter about the art show at school next Friday. Liam made pancakes, Mickey Mouse shaped as always, and listened to his daughter describe her painting of their family. I put us in a castle, Mia explained seriously, syrup dripping from her fork, because you always say home should be a safe place. And castles are super safe with the walls and stuff. But I painted windows too because you also say we should let the light in. Is that good symbolism, Daddy? That's perfect symbolism, baby. Your teacher is going to love it. Will you come to the art show? It's on Friday at 3 o'clock. I know you work, but I'll be there, Liam promised, hoping desperately that he'd still have flexible employment by Friday. I wouldn't miss seeing your castle for anything. Mia beamed, then returned to her pancakes with 6-year-old focus. Liam watched her eat and felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders. Everything he did, every risk he took, rippled out to affect this small person who trusted him completely. He'd chosen solidarity with Elena on that rooftop. Now he had to live with whatever consequences that choice generated. The weekend passed in strange suspension. Liam took Mia to the park, helped with homework, read bedtime stories about brave princesses and clever dragons. Normal life continued while Monday's reckoning loomed like a storm on the horizon. Elena spent Saturday reviewing every decision she'd made as CEO, preparing for Monday's board meeting with the same meticulous attention she'd applied to the Riverside project presentation. But this time, she wasn't building armor. She was organizing truth. Every questionable decision Marcus had undermined, every time Victor had leveraged blackmail to influence her choices, every instance where the board had valued control over competence. She documented everything with emails, meeting notes, financial records that showed exactly how much value she'd brought to Hamilton and Pierce, despite constant obstruction. If they wanted to remove her, fine, but she'd make them acknowledge exactly what they were losing. Sunday evening, Elena received an unexpected visitor. Margaret Chen appeared at her apartment door with a bottle of wine and an expression of grim determination. "May I come in?" Margaret asked. "We need to talk about tomorrow." Elena stepped aside, allowing the older woman into her minimalist space. Margaret glanced around with appraising eyes, taking in the expensive furniture, the architectural awards on shelves, the obvious absence of personal photographs or warmth. "You live like you're afraid to leave evidence of existing," Margaret observed. "Nothing personal, nothing vulnerable." "I had to be careful. Victor's leverage is gone, Elena. You burned that bridge Friday night, publicly, completely." Margaret accepted a wine glass and settled onto the couch. "Which means tomorrow's meeting isn't about blackmail anymore. It's about power and who deserves to wield it." "Marcus has the votes," Elena said flatly. "You told me that yourself." He did have the votes, past tense. Margaret's smile was sharp. But something interesting happened over the weekend. 3 board members received calls from major clients threatening to pull their contracts if you're removed. 2 more got emails from the architectural press asking for comments on the firm's treatment of its first female CEO. And David Morrison made it very publicly known that he's offering you a partnership. Elena sat down slowly. I didn't ask anyone to intervene. Of course you didn't. But your work speaks for itself. The clients you've brought in aren't loyal to Hamilton and Pierce. They're loyal to you. The awards and recognition this firm has received in the past 3 years, all directly tied to projects you led. Margaret sipped her wine. Marcus thought removing you would be simple. He's discovering it's considerably more complicated. So what happens tomorrow? That depends entirely on you. Margaret's expression turned serious. Marcus will offer a compromise. You stay as CEO, but accept Victor as co-director with equal authority over major projects. It gives them control while maintaining the appearance of your leadership. That's not compromise. That's surrender disguised as collaboration. Exactly. But it allows everyone to save face. You keep your title, they keep their power. The firm continues without disruption. Margaret paused. It's also a cage. Victor will undermine every decision you make. Marcus will use him to slowly erode your authority until you quit out of frustration. It's a slow death instead of a quick execution. Elena thought about that future. Years of fighting the same battles, proving herself repeatedly, watching her vision be diluted by men who valued control over creativity. The exhaustion felt crushing just imagining it. What's my alternative? Walk away. Take Morrison's offer. Build something new without the weight of this firm's politics and Marcus's ego. Margaret's voice softened. You're 35 years old, Elena. You have decades of career ahead of you. Don't waste them fighting a war you can't win. That feels like giving up. It's strategic retreat. There's a difference. Margaret finished her wine and stood. Think about it tonight. Tomorrow morning, you'll need to make a choice. But whatever you decide, know that some of us recognize what you've accomplished here, what you've survived. That matters, even if the outcome isn't what you hoped. After Margaret left, Elena stood at her windows and watched the city lights blur into abstract patterns. She thought about the Riverside project, the community spaces, the sustainable design, the vision of architecture that served people rather than just profits. She thought about the associates she'd mentored, the standards she'd set, the changes she'd fought to implement. And she thought about Liam Carter standing beside her on that rooftop, offering his hand when everyone else was calculating how to benefit from her fall. Her phone, turned back on for the first time since Friday, showed dozens of messages. Most were vultures circling. But buried among them was another one from Liam, sent late Saturday night. Mia asked me today what makes someone a hero. I told her heroes are people who stand up for what's right, even when it costs them everything. She said that sounds scary. I agreed. It is scary, but it's also the only way to live with yourself. I think you understand that better than most. Elena read the message 3 times, her decision crystallizing with each pass. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, Philadelphia autumn asserting itself with wind that cut through expensive coats and rattled office windows. Elena dressed carefully, not the armor she usually wore, but something simpler. Black suit, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, rather than the elaborate styles she typically maintained. She looked professional, but not performative, competent, but not cold. Human. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the main conference room. Elena arrived at 8:30 to find the space already occupied. Marcus sat at the head of the table, Victor to his right. 10 other board members filled the remaining seats, their expressions ranging from sympathetic to predatory. Elena, thank you for coming. Marcus's tone was professionally courteous, but his eyes were calculating. Please, sit. Elena remained standing. I'll stand, thank you. This shouldn't take long. Marcus frowned. We have quite a bit to discuss. Friday's events raised serious concerns about my judgment, my professionalism, my fitness for leadership. Yes, I'm sure. Elena's voice was calm and clear. But before we discuss my failures, let's discuss the firm's successes. In the 3 years since I became CEO, Hamilton and Pierce's revenue has increased by 240%. We've won 11 major design awards. Client retention is improved by 67%. We've been featured in Architectural Digest, Modern Building, and Design Weekly. 5 of our junior associates have been recruited by competing firms specifically because they trained under my leadership. She placed a folder on the table, letting it land with deliberate emphasis. This contains documentation of every major decision I've made as CEO, the financial outcomes, and the strategic reasoning. It also contains emails showing how those decisions were undermined, second-guessed, or overruled by board members who valued control over results. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Marcus's expression hardened. "Your accomplishments aren't in question," he said tightly. "Your recent behavior is." Dancing with maintenance staff during a critical business event demonstrated profound lack of judgment. I danced with someone who showed me kindness when I was struggling, someone who offered support instead of calculating how to exploit my vulnerability. Elena met Marcus's eyes steadily. If that's a firing offense, then this firm values appearance over humanity, performance over compassion, isolation over connection. "This is a business, not a therapy session," Victor interjected. "Emotional outbursts and inappropriate relationships undermine professional credibility. My relationship with Liam Carter is none of this board's business, but since you've made it relevant, let me be clear. He demonstrated more integrity in 5 minutes than some people in this room have shown in 3 years." Elena's gaze swept across the assembled board members. He risked his job to stand beside someone who needed support. That's leadership. That's the kind of character this firm should value instead of punish. "Elena, please sit down." Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "Let's discuss this calmly." "I am calm. I'm also clear about what's happening here." Elena remained standing, her posture straight but not rigid. "Marcus brought Victor in as a consultant specifically to diminish my authority. Victor used illegally obtained medical records to blackmail me into compliance. This board allowed that dynamic to continue because it was easier than challenging Marcus's power." "Those are serious accusations," another board member said carefully. "Do you have proof?" "I have 3 years of emails, text messages, and meeting notes documenting every instance where Victor threatened me or Marcus undermined my decisions." Elena's voice remained steady. "I also have statements from 5 major clients threatening to terminate their contracts if I'm removed. And I have an offer from Morrison Development Group to join them as a partner with full creative control." The room went absolutely silent. This was the information Margaret had hinted at, now confirmed directly by Elena herself. Marcus recovered quickly. "Morrison's offer is flattering, I'm sure, but we're prepared to make our own offer. You remain as CEO, but you accept Victor as co-director with equal authority over major projects. It provides necessary oversight while maintaining your position." "Oversight," Elena repeated. "Another word for control. Another way to ensure I don't make decisions independently." She shook her head slowly. "No, I won't accept a cage disguised as compromise." "Then what do you want?" Victor demanded. "Absolute power, complete autonomy. That's not how firms this size operate." "I want respect. I want trust. I want the freedom to lead without constant sabotage from people who should be supporting me." Elena's voice gained strength. "But I don't think this board can provide those things. Not really. Not while Marcus holds ultimate authority and uses it to punish independence rather than reward results." "So you're resigning?" Marcus sounded simultaneously relieved and suspicious. "No, I'm making you a choice." Elena pulled a document from her jacket pocket. "This is my formal resignation, effective in 30 days. It gives the firm time to transition leadership and protect ongoing projects. It also contains clauses preventing you from bad-mouthing my work or interfering with my future employment." She placed it on the table with deliberate care. "However," Elena continued, "I'm also prepared to withdraw this resignation under specific conditions. Victor Hale is removed from all consulting roles immediately. His contract is terminated with prejudice and he's barred from future association with this firm. Marcus steps down as board chairman while remaining as a board member. The board implements a formal oversight process preventing any single individual from wielding unchecked authority over the CEO." The room erupted in protests and arguments. Marcus stood so quickly his chair fell backward. "Those conditions are absurd. I built this firm. I brought you in when we were failing." "And I saved the firm you were driving into bankruptcy," Elena shot back. "You brought me in because you needed my talent and vision, But you never intended to actually let me lead. You wanted a brilliant puppet, and when I refused to perform that role, you spent 3 years trying to break me. This is ridiculous. The board will never accept. The board will vote, Margaret interrupted firmly. That's how this works, Marcus. Elena has made her terms clear. We vote on them. She's blackmailing us with threats of client defection and media exposure. She's negotiating from a position of strength, Margaret corrected. Something you do constantly. The only difference is she's doing it honestly instead of manipulating from the shadows. Marcus looked around the table, seeking support. Several board members wouldn't meet his eyes. Others looked thoughtful, calculating the political mathematics. If we accept these conditions, one of them said slowly, what guarantee do we have that you'll stay? That you won't just take Morrison's offer anyway? You have my word, Elena said simply. I'll commit to 3 more years as CEO if the board demonstrates genuine support, but I won't stay in a hostile environment designed to destroy me. I've already survived that for too long. The arguments continued for another hour. Marcus raged about betrayal and ingratitude. Victor threatened legal action over his contract termination. Several board members raised concerns about precedent and authority. But gradually, the tide shifted. Margaret made eloquent arguments about the firm's future. 2 other board members cited financial data showing Elena's value. One of the younger members pointed out that removing a successful female CEO would generate terrible press in an industry already struggling with diversity. Finally, Margaret called for a vote. All in favor of accepting Elena's conditions: Victor Hale's immediate termination, Marcus Hamilton's resignation as board chairman, and implementation of CEO oversight reforms. Raise your hands. Elena watched hands rise around the table. 1, 2, 3. Margaret's hand. 5, 6, 7 votes. 1 more than the majority needed. Marcus stared at the raised hands with an expression of absolute betrayal. You're making a catastrophic mistake. This firm needs experienced leadership, not idealistic experiments in. This meeting is concluded, Margaret said firmly. Marcus will need your formal resignation as chairman by end of business today. Victor, your contract termination will be processed immediately. Elena will draw up the new oversight protocols within the week. Victor stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You'll regret this, all of you. When this firm collapses under her incompetent leadership, remember you chose feelings over experience. We chose results over ego, Margaret corrected. There's a difference. Victor stormed out, Marcus following more slowly. The remaining board members began gathering their materials, some congratulating Elena, others avoiding eye contact. Elena stood frozen, struggling to process what had just happened. She'd prepared for battle and found unexpected victory. The relief was overwhelming and terrifying in equal measure. Margaret approached with a slight smile. Congratulations. You just won an impossible fight. I don't feel like I won anything. I feel like I just committed to 3 more years of fighting. Probably accurate, but now you'll be fighting with support instead of fighting alone. Margaret squeezed her shoulder gently. That makes all the difference. The boardroom emptied, leaving Elena alone with her victory and its weight. She pulled out her phone and composed a message to Liam before she could overthink it. The board voted to keep me as CEO. Marcus and Victor are out. I'm staying. And I think I might have you to thank for the courage to make that possible. Would you let me buy you coffee sometime? I owe you at least that much. She sent it, then left the conference room with steady steps and uncertain hope. Across the city, Liam was replacing drywall in a construction site when his phone buzzed. He read Elena's message 3 times, a smile spreading across his face despite the dust and exhaustion. His response was simple. Coffee sounds perfect. And you don't owe me anything, but I'm glad you're staying. That firm needs you more than they deserved you. The construction foreman called his name, and Liam pocketed his phone, returning to the honest work of building things that would shelter families and create spaces for life to happen. But as he worked, he thought about Elena standing in that boardroom, fighting for her right to lead with integrity. Thought about the courage it took to make ultimatums when surrender would have been easier. And he thought about Mia's question about heroes, people who stand up for what's right even when it costs them everything. Elena Vaughn was a hero, even if she'd probably never call herself that. And somehow, impossibly, she'd won her war. For now, at least. The real work, Building something sustainable from the ashes of the old regime was just beginning. But Elena wouldn't be doing it alone anymore. And that, Liam suspected, made all the difference in the world. The coffee shop Elena chose was deliberately unpretentious. A small neighborhood place in South Philadelphia, far from the corporate towers and power lunch establishments where she usually conducted business. Mismatched furniture, local art on exposed brick walls, the comforting hiss of an espresso machine operated by a barista with sleeve tattoos and a genuine smile. Liam arrived 5 minutes early, still wearing his construction clothes because he'd come straight from a job site in Fishtown. He spotted Elena immediately, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups already ordered, her professional armor replaced by jeans and a simple sweater that made her look younger and somehow more real. She stood when she saw him, and for a moment they faced each other with the awkwardness of 2 people whose relationship had been forged in crisis and now existed in normal daylight. "Hi," Elena said, and the simple greeting carried weight. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "Why wouldn't I?" Liam slid into the booth across from her. "Because I got you nearly fired. Because associating with me probably still carries professional risk. Because you have every reason to want distance from the disaster that is my life." Elena pushed one of the coffee cups toward him. "Black with 2 sugars. I remember from that night you were fixing the ventilation in my office. You left your cup on the maintenance cart." Liam blinked, surprised she'd noticed such a detail. "You have good memory for someone who was supposedly too cold to notice people." "I noticed everything. I just couldn't let anyone know I cared." Elena wrapped her hands around her own cup, as if seeking warmth. The Ice Queen image wasn't just about intimidation. It was protection. If nobody got close, nobody could hurt me. "Victor hurt you anyway." "Victor hurt me because I let him close back when I was young and stupid, and believed that loving someone meant making myself small enough to fit their expectations." Elena's voice carried old pain but new strength. "I spent 3 years letting that past control my present, letting fear dictate every decision, building walls so high I forgot what sunlight felt like." Liam sipped his coffee. Perfect. Exactly how he liked it. And studied the woman across from him. Gone was the rigid composure, the calculated perfection. In its place was something messier and infinitely more authentic. "What changed?" he asked quietly. "On that rooftop, what made you finally stop performing?" Elena smiled, sad and beautiful. "You did. You offered your hand and asked me to dance, and I realized I'd been fighting so hard to prove I didn't need anyone that I'd forgotten what connection felt like. What it meant to have someone stand beside you without agenda or calculation." She met his eyes directly. "You saw me, Liam. Actually saw me when I'd convinced myself invisibility was safer than vulnerability. I'm not special. I just paid attention." In a world where most people look right through the inconvenient and uncomfortable, paying attention is revolutionary. Elena paused, choosing her next words carefully. "I need to tell you something. About the board meeting, about why I stayed instead of taking Morrison's offer. You don't owe me explanations about your career decisions." "This isn't about owing. It's about honesty." Elena took a breath. "When Margaret came to my apartment Sunday night, she told me the smart move was walking away, starting fresh somewhere without Hamilton and Pierce's toxic politics and Marcus's ego, and she was right. Strategically, leaving made perfect sense." "But you stayed." "I stayed because of what you said that night, about courage being the choice to do what's right, even when you're terrified, about how the only way to live with yourself is standing up for what matters." Elena's voice caught slightly. "I kept thinking about Mia asking what makes someone a hero, and I realized that if I walked away from Hamilton and Pierce, I'd be teaching her, and myself, that the answer to difficulty is retreat, that when powerful people try to control you, you surrender and start over somewhere else." "Starting over isn't surrender," Liam said gently. "Sometimes it's survival." "I know, but for me in that moment it would have been running, and I was so tired of running from Victor's blackmail, from the board's doubts, from my own fear of being exposed as human." Elena smiled, stronger now. "So I stayed. I made them choose, real support or my resignation, and somehow impossibly enough of them chose support. Margaret voted for you, and the others saw the numbers. You're too valuable to lose." "Maybe, But I think some of them also saw what happened on that rooftop and recognized something true. That leadership isn't about perfection or invulnerability. It's about having the courage to be human in public. Elena reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of touching his. You gave me that courage, Liam. You demonstrated what it looks like to risk everything for solidarity instead of safety. Liam looked at her hand, close enough to take, but waiting for permission. He thought about the risks still present, the professional complications, the social barriers, the very real possibility that whatever this connection was could damage them both further. Then he thought about Mia's painting of their family in a castle with windows letting light in. Safety with openness, protection without isolation. He took Elena's hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. So what happens now? He asked. You're CEO again, with actual support this time. I'm still maintenance and construction, trying to pay bills and raise my daughter. We live in different worlds that barely overlap. Then maybe we build a bridge between those worlds. See what's possible when we stop letting other people's expectations define what we're allowed to want. Elena squeezed his hand gently. I'm not proposing marriage or declaring eternal love. I barely know you beyond those brief conversations and one world-changing dance. But I'd like to know you better, if you're willing to risk the complications. Complications are my specialty, Liam said with a slight smile. Single father, 2 jobs, mountain of medical debt, and a tendency to make terrible decisions with excellent intentions. What's one more complication? Elena laughed, genuine and unguarded, the sound drawing curious glances from other customers. When you describe it that way, I sound like a perfectly reasonable addition to your disaster collection. You're the CEO of a major architectural firm. I fix toilets and hang drywall. People are going to have opinions about this. Let them have opinions. I spent 3 years caring what people thought, and it nearly destroyed me. Elena's expression turned serious. But I need you to understand something, Liam. My life is complicated in ways that could affect you and Mia. Victor's gone, but he's vindictive. He might try to cause problems. The media might get interested if they find out the Ice Queen is dating maintenance staff. Your job could become more difficult if people think you're using our relationship for advancement. Are you trying to talk me out of this before we even start? I'm trying to be honest about the risks. You took enough chances for me already. I won't let you walk into more problems without full information. Liam considered that, appreciating her directness even as he recognized the fear beneath it. Elena was still protecting, still trying to manage every possible outcome. Old habits died hard. Here's what I know, he said slowly. Mia asked me last week what makes someone worth knowing. I told her it's not about what they have or what they do for work. It's about who they are when things get hard, how they treat people who can't benefit them, whether they choose kindness when cruelty would be easier. He met Elena's eyes steadily. You've spent 3 years being kind to employees who couldn't advance your career. You mentored Jennifer Wallace even after criticizing her work. You approved budget increases for maintenance when it didn't generate profit. You chose truth over safety when lying would have preserved your position. Those are pretty low bars for character assessment. They're higher than you think. Most people fail them. Liam smiled gently. I want to know you better, Elena. Not the CEO, not the brilliant architect, not the Ice Queen. Just you, messy, complicated, healing from years of survival mode. That person seems worth the risk. Elena's eyes filled with tears she didn't bother hiding. I don't know how to do this. How to let someone close without calculating every possible way it could go wrong. Then we figure it out together. Make mistakes, apologize, try again. That's what relationships are. Continuous practice at being human with another human. That sounds terrifying. It is, but also kind of beautiful. They sat in comfortable silence, hands still linked across the scarred wooden table, while conversations flowed around them and espresso machines hissed, and Philadelphia's autumn afternoon light filtered through windows that needed cleaning. It was ordinary and profound, this moment of 2 people choosing connection despite every reasonable argument for self-protection. Elena's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with visible reluctance. I should get back to the office. First day implementing the new oversight protocols, and I need to demonstrate competent leadership to the board members who took a chance on me. And I've got to pick up Mia from school in an hour. Tuesday is library day. She's very serious about checking out books about space exploration and mythical creatures. She sounds wonderful. I'd like to meet her sometime, if that's appropriate. I don't want to presume. You can meet her, Liam said, surprising himself with how much he wanted that. Not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but when the time feels right. She's good at reading people, better than most adults. She'll probably like you, or she'll see right through me and decide I'm secretly a villain. Kids are generally good at distinguishing between real villains and people who've just had to be tough to survive. Liam stood, reluctantly releasing Elena's hand. When can I see you again? Elena smiled, and this time it reached her eyes completely. Friday night? There's an art gallery opening in Old City. One of our junior associates has work being featured. I was planning to attend alone, but it might be more enjoyable with company. I'll need to arrange childcare for Mia. Bring her. The gallery is kid-friendly, and they usually have an activity station. Plus, I'd like to see what she thinks of modern architecture design. Liam hesitated, recognizing the significance of that invitation. Taking Mia to a work event with Elena meant making their connection visible to her colleagues. It meant deliberate choices instead of accidental encounters. It meant acknowledging this was becoming something real. Friday at 6, he confirmed. Friday at 6. They walked out of the coffee shop together, and Liam noticed the moment when Elena's professional mask started to descend, her shoulders straightening, her expression neutralizing for the business world she was returning to. But this time, before the transformation completed, she paused. Thank you, she said quietly. For coffee? For honesty? For not running when you had every excuse to. Thank you for letting me in, even when it scared you. Elena nodded, then walked toward her car with purposeful strides. Liam watched her go, still processing the surreal reality that he'd just made plans with Elena Vaughn. The Ice Queen who wasn't icy at all, just frozen by years of necessary self-protection. He drove to Mia's school, arriving early enough to wait outside with other parents. When she emerged, backpack bouncing and smile bright, she ran directly into his arms with 6-year-old enthusiasm. Daddy, guess what? We learned about butterflies today and how they start as caterpillars and then build a chrysalis and transform into something completely different. Isn't that amazing? That's very amazing, baby. Nature is full of transformations. Miss Peterson says sometimes people transform too, like when they learn new things or become braver or stop being scared of stuff that used to scare them. Mia looked up at him with those solemn eyes. Have you ever transformed, Daddy? Liam thought about the past week. The rooftop dance, the risks taken, the choice to stand beside someone who needed support despite every practical argument against it. The old Liam, the one who'd existed before that Friday night, wouldn't have been capable of what happened next. Something had shifted, transformed. I think I'm transforming right now, he admitted. Slowly, like a caterpillar building a chrysalis. What kind of butterfly will you be? I don't know yet. I guess we'll find out together. Mia accepted this with the easy wisdom of children who understood metaphor better than adults gave them credit for. I can't wait to see. Butterflies are beautiful. That Friday, Liam dressed carefully. Not his construction clothes or maintenance uniform, but actual nice clothes borrowed from his brother for occasions that required looking presentable. Dark slacks, button-down shirt, jacket that was slightly too big but acceptable. Mia wore her favorite dress, the purple one with stars that she insisted made her look like a princess astronaut. The gallery was in a converted warehouse in Old City, all exposed brick and modern lighting. Liam felt immediately out of place among people in designer clothes, discussing spatial dynamics and postmodern aesthetics. But Mia was delighted by the activity station where kids could create their own architectural designs with colorful blocks and drawing materials. Elena found them within minutes, looking simultaneously professional and approachable in a charcoal dress that managed to be elegant without being intimidating. She crouched to Mia's level with natural ease. You must be Mia. Your dad has told me wonderful things about you. I especially love hearing about your plans to be a dinosaur veterinarian. Mia studied Elena with serious consideration. That's a very hard job because dinosaurs are extinct, but Daddy says we should dream big even when things seem impossible. Your daddy is very wise. I'm Elena. I work with your dad sometimes. At the fancy building, the one with the tall windows? Exactly that one. I design buildings there. Mia's eyes widened. You make buildings? That's so cool. I like making things too. Look, I'm making a castle with windows for light. She gestured to her block creation. Elena examined the structure with genuine interest, asking questions about Mia's design choices and why she'd placed windows at specific angles. Liam watched them interact and felt something warm settle in his chest, this connection forming naturally, without performance or pretense. Ms. Vaughn, a junior associate approached nervously. I'm so glad you came. The pieces in the west corner are mine, the ones exploring negative space in residential design. I wouldn't miss it, Jennifer. Let me see what you've created. Elena stood, then glanced at Liam. Come with me? I'd value your perspective. They moved through the gallery together, CEO, maintenance man, and 6-year-old aspiring dinosaur veterinarian, and Liam watched people notice them. Some faces registered confusion. Others showed calculation, already speculating about the relationship. A few displayed open disapproval. Elena noticed too, but instead of retreating into Ice Queen armor, she simply took Liam's hand with casual confidence. The gesture was small, but deliberate, a public declaration that she didn't care about their opinions. Jennifer's work was impressive, architectural renderings that played with light and shadow, exploring how negative space could create emotional resonance in residential design. Elena asked thoughtful questions, offered constructive feedback, and introduced Jennifer to several people who could advance her career. You're good at this, Liam observed quietly, while Mia was distracted by another art installation. Mentoring people, building them up instead of tearing them down. Marcus taught me what not to do. Victor showed me how control destroys creativity. I learned more from their failures than I ever would have from positive role models. Elena watched Jennifer confidently discussing her work with a potential client. Everyone deserves someone who believes in their potential, who sees what they could become and helps them build toward it. Is that what you're doing with me? Seeing potential? Elena turned to him with an expression of unexpected vulnerability. I see someone who's already become extraordinary despite every obstacle life threw at him. Someone who raises a brilliant daughter while working 2 jobs and still finds energy to stand beside people who need support. You don't need me to see your potential, Liam. You've already achieved it. That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me in years. Then people haven't been paying attention. They spent 2 hours at the gallery, Mia alternating between creating her own art and asking Elena detailed questions about building design. When they finally left, the autumn evening had turned cold, Philadelphia's temperature dropping with the setting sun. I should get Mia home, Liam said reluctantly. School night, and she needs consistent bedtimes or mornings get complicated. Of course. Thank you for coming, both of you. Elena crouched again to Mia's level. It was wonderful meeting you, Mia. I hope I see you again soon. Me too. Maybe you can come to my art show next Friday? I painted our family in a castle with windows. Daddy says you're really good at understanding buildings and stuff. Elena glanced at Liam, question in her eyes. He nodded slightly, permission granted. I would love to see your painting, Elena told Mia. What time is your art show? 3 o'clock. But Daddy has to leave work early to come, so maybe that's too hard for you because you're important and busy. Nothing is more important than seeing someone's art, Elena said seriously. I'll be there at 3 o'clock, I promise. Mia beamed, then hugged Elena spontaneously, the kind of uninhibited affection only children managed. Elena looked surprised, then her expression softened into something beautiful as she hugged back gently. Later, after Mia was asleep and Liam sat alone in his small living room reviewing the evening, his phone buzzed with a message from Elena. Your daughter is extraordinary. She has your kindness and your ability to see through pretense directly to truth. I can see why you work so hard to give her a good life. She deserves it, and so do you. Liam smiled, typing his response. She asked me after you left if you were my girlfriend. I didn't know how to answer. What are we, Elena? The response came quickly. I think we're 2 people figuring out what we could be. Is that enough for now? That's perfect for now. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm neither of them had planned, but both gradually trusted. Elena attended Mia's art show, genuinely praising the castle painting and asking serious questions about Mia's artistic vision. Liam started meeting Elena for coffee between his construction shifts and her board meetings. Mia and Elena built elaborate block structures together on Saturday afternoons, the CEO and the 6-year-old finding common language in creative design. The firm's gossip mill churned constantly, but Elena had stopped caring about speculation. The new oversight protocols meant Marcus no longer wielded unchecked authority, and without Victor's blackmail hanging over her, Elena could focus on actually leading instead of constantly defending. The Riverside project moved forward with Elena's original vision intact: community spaces, sustainable design, architecture that served people rather than just profits. Ground broke in November, and the ceremony included speeches from city officials, investors, and Elena herself. Liam attended with Mia, standing in the crowd of construction workers who'd actually build what Elena had designed. When Elena spotted them, she paused mid-speech. "This project represents more than architecture," she said, her voice carrying across the gathering. "It represents the belief that great design serves everyone, not just the wealthy, not just the powerful, but the families who will live here, the children who will play in these community spaces, the workers who will build it with their hands and expertise." She gestured toward where Liam and Mia stood. "I've learned recently that the most valuable perspectives often come from unexpected places. That wisdom isn't determined by job titles or social status. That sometimes the people we overlook are exactly the people we most need to hear." The speech continued, but Liam barely heard the rest. Elena had just acknowledged him publicly, professionally, in front of investors and city officials. She'd made their connection visible in the space that mattered most to her. After the ceremony, as people dispersed toward the reception tent, Liam found Elena surrounded by well-wishers and associates vying for her attention. She excused herself politely and walked directly to him. "That was a hell of a speech," he said quietly. "I meant every word. This project is better because of conversations we've had, because you reminded me that architecture is ultimately about people, not prestige." Elena glanced at Mia, who was examining the construction equipment with fascination. "She's going to be an amazing architect someday, or veterinarian, or whatever she decides to become. She asked me last night if you were going to be her stepmom." Elena's eyes widened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that adults take time figuring out relationships, that we care about each other, but we're still learning how to fit together." Liam paused. "I also told her that whoever I choose to build a life with needs to be someone who sees her as a gift, not an obligation. She's absolutely a gift. Spending time with her has reminded me what joy looks like without agenda, what creativity means when it's not being monetized or judged." Elena's voice dropped. "I never wanted children, Liam. After the abortion, after everything with Victor, I decided motherhood wasn't for me. But being around Mia makes me wonder if that decision was less about not wanting to be a mother, and more about being terrified I'd fail at it the way I failed at everything else personal." "You haven't failed at anything. You survived situations that would have destroyed most people." "Survival isn't the same as living. I'm only just learning the difference." They stood together watching Mia explore the construction site, and Liam felt the future stretching ahead with possibility instead of just obligation. He still worked 2 jobs. Elena still ran a major firm with all its pressures and politics. The practical complications hadn't disappeared, but something fundamental had shifted. They were building something together, not just a relationship, but a vision of what life could look like when you stopped performing and started being honest about what you actually needed. 3 months later, on a cold January evening, Liam finished his shift at Hamilton and Pierce and found an envelope taped to his maintenance cart. Inside was a formal letter on company stationery. "Mr. Carter, we are pleased to offer you a position in our Community Design Initiative, a new program developing accessible architecture for underserved neighborhoods. Your practical experience with building systems and your perspective on how families actually use residential spaces would be invaluable to this work. The position includes full benefits, competitive salary, and tuition assistance should you choose to pursue formal architecture education. We hope you'll consider joining our team in this new capacity." It was signed by Elena and 3 board members, including Margaret Chen. Liam read it twice, his hands shaking slightly. This wasn't charity or favoritism. Elena had been talking about the Community Design Initiative for weeks, explaining how the firm needed people who understood practical construction and family needs, not just theoretical design principles. But it was also an opportunity that wouldn't have existed without their connection, without Elena seeing him as more than maintenance staff, without her creating space for overlooked perspectives to contribute meaningfully. He found her in her office, reviewing blueprints under the warm glow of her desk lamp. She looked up when he entered, and her smile was immediate and genuine. "You got the letter." "Elena, I can't accept this. People will say I got the job because we're together. They'll say it's nepotism or inappropriate, or they'll say a lot of things. They always do." Elena stood and walked around her desk. "But the truth is, you're qualified for this position. Your construction experience gives you insight our formally trained architects lack. Your understanding of how real families use residential spaces is exactly what we need for community-focused design." She paused. "Yes, I created the initiative partly because I saw what you had to offer. But I also created it because the firm needs this perspective to do better work. You're not a favor. You're an asset." "What about Mia? The childcare logistics, the schedule changes?" "The position offers flexible hours specifically to accommodate parents. You can adjust your schedule around Mia's school day, work from home when needed. We're trying to build a model that proves talented people don't have to choose between career and family." Liam stared at the letter, opportunity and fear warring in his chest. "What if I fail? What if I'm not actually good at this?" "Then you'll learn and improve, same as everyone else. Failure isn't fatal, Liam. It's educational." Elena's expression softened. "You taught me that courage means choosing what's right even when you're terrified. Now I'm asking you to practice what you preach. Take the risk. See what you're capable of when you stop limiting yourself to what feels safe." He thought about Mia's question months ago. Can you have two jobs? Can you do more than one thing? People weren't just one thing. They could transform, like butterflies emerging from chrysalises. They could expand beyond the roles others had assigned them. "Okay," Liam said quietly. "I'll take the position, and I'll try not to disappoint you." "You couldn't disappoint me if you tried. You've already exceeded every expectation just by being yourself." 6 months later, Liam sat at a drafting desk in Hamilton and Pierce's Community Design Division, working on affordable housing projects that would provide quality residential spaces for families like his own. The work was challenging and meaningful, combining his construction knowledge with new skills he was learning through the firm's education program. Mia had adjusted beautifully to the changes, proud that her daddy now designed buildings instead of just fixing them. She'd started calling herself an architect in training, creating elaborate structures from blocks and paper that demonstrated surprising understanding of spatial design. And Elena had transformed in ways that amazed everyone who'd known her as the Ice Queen. She still demanded excellence and maintained high standards. But now she led with vulnerability as well as strength, acknowledging struggles and celebrating successes in equal measure. The firm had flourished under her leadership. 3 major projects had won sustainability awards. Client satisfaction had reached record highs. Several associates had been promoted into positions they'd never imagined accessing. The culture had shifted from competitive survival to collaborative innovation. One evening, after Mia had gone to bed at Elena's apartment, a space that had gradually accumulated evidence of life and warmth, Elena and Liam sat on her couch reviewing his latest design proposal. "This is excellent work," Elena said, studying the drawings. "The way you've integrated community space with residential units shows real understanding of how families interact with their environments. I had a good teacher and a 6-year-old consultant who has strong opinions about playground placement." Liam set aside the drawings and looked at Elena seriously. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you happy? Actually happy? Not just professionally successful?" Elena considered the question with the same thoughtfulness she applied to architectural challenges. "I didn't know what happiness felt like until recently. I thought success and happiness were the same thing, that if I achieved enough, won enough awards, proved myself sufficiently, the satisfaction would feel like joy. But it didn't. It felt like exhaustion dressed up as accomplishment, like performing a role well but never getting to leave the stage." She took his hand, their fingers interlacing with practiced ease. "Then a maintenance man asked me to dance on a rooftop, and I remembered what it felt like to be seen as a person instead of a position, to have someone care about my well-being instead of my utility. That's when happiness became possible. I'm just one person. I can't fix everything that's broken in your world. You're not supposed to fix anything. You're supposed to stand beside me while I fix myself." Elena smiled. "That's what love is. Not rescue, but companionship during the hard work of becoming whole. The word love hung between them, said casually but carrying weight. They danced around it for months, both aware the feeling existed, but neither quite brave enough to name it. Love, Liam repeated softly. That's a big word. I'm aware. I'm also aware that I love you, not despite the complications, but including them. I love your dedication to Mia. I love your stubborn insistence on choosing kindness when cynicism would be easier. I love that you see through my professional armor to the person beneath and still choose to stay. Elena's voice was steady but vulnerable. I don't need you to say it back. I just needed you to know. Liam thought about all the ways love manifested. The Mickey Mouse pancakes and bedtime stories. The late nights reviewing blueprints and discussing design principles. The gradual building of trust and partnership and shared vision for the future. I love you too, he said, the words both terrifying and liberating. I love your courage and your complexity. I love watching you mentor young architects and build systems that serve people instead of just profits. I love that you read Mia bedtime stories using architectural terms, and she somehow understands them. She's brilliant. She gets that from you. She gets it from her own magnificent self, but we're helping her become the person she's meant to be. Liam paused. I want to keep doing that, together, if you're willing. Are you proposing something specific? Not marriage. Not yet. We're still figuring out how our lives fit together. But commitment, partnership, building something lasting instead of just seeing what happens. He squeezed her hand gently. I want to stop hedging our bets and start actively choosing each other. If that's what you want too. Elena answered by kissing him, tender and certain, a response that needed no words. When they finally pulled apart, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I choose you, she whispered. I choose this. I choose the beautiful, complicated, messy reality of building a life with someone who sees me completely and stays anyway. Then I guess we're doing this. I guess we are. They sat together on the couch, Elena's head resting on Liam's shoulder, while Philadelphia's lights glittered beyond the windows. The future remained uncertain. There would be challenges, obstacles, moments of doubt and difficulty. But they'd face those challenges together, two people who'd learned that strength came not from isolation, but from the courage to be vulnerable with someone who'd earned that trust. Mia emerged from the bedroom, rubbing her eyes sleepily. I had a bad dream about dinosaurs being mean. Elena stood immediately, extending her hand. Come here, sweetheart. Let's talk about friendly dinosaurs instead. Did you know some paleontologists believe certain species traveled in family groups for protection and support? Mia took her hand trustingly, and Liam watched them walk back toward the bedroom together, his daughter and the woman he loved, building their own connection independent of his relationship with either of them. This was family, not the traditional structure he'd once imagined, but something equally valuable. A chosen constellation of people who saw each other's humanity and committed to showing up consistently with love and support. Later, after Mia had been settled with stories about dinosaur families and gentle giants, Elena returned to the couch in Liam's waiting arms. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For teaching me that asking for help isn't weakness. For showing me what partnership looks like when it's built on mutual respect instead of control. For giving me permission to be human instead of perfect. Elena's voice was thick with emotion. You saved my life that night on the rooftop. Not dramatically, not like in movies. But you saved me from a future of isolation and performance and slowly disappearing behind armor that protected nothing because there was nothing left to protect. You saved yourself, Liam corrected gently. I just stood beside you while you did the work. Then thank you for standing beside me. For staying when you had every excuse to walk away, for choosing solidarity over safety. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something extraordinary from courage and honesty and the radical choice to be vulnerable. Outside, Philadelphia continued its endless rhythm, people working and dreaming and fighting their own battles against loneliness and fear. The city stretched toward the horizon, full of stories unfolding in apartment buildings and office towers and small houses where single parents made Mickey Mouse pancakes for brilliant daughters who believed in impossible dreams. And in one apartment, on one couch, two people held each other and believed in their own impossible dream that love could exist across social barriers, that vulnerability could be strength, that the maintenance man and the CEO could build a partnership as solid as the buildings they'd soon design together. The Ice Queen had melted completely, revealing the warm, complicated, beautiful person beneath. And the invisible maintenance man had become visible, his perspective valued and his presence essential. Their story had begun with a dance on a rooftop beneath string lights and judgment. It had survived blackmail, board politics, public scrutiny, and every practical argument against its existence. And now it continued, quieter but no less powerful, in the daily choices to choose each other, to show up consistently, to build something lasting from the wreckage of what had been. The rooftop dance had changed everything, but the real transformation happened in all the ordinary moments that followed. The coffee shop conversations and gallery openings, the bedtime stories and design reviews, the gradual building of trust that became love, that became partnership, that became family. This was the ending that felt like a beginning, the resolution that opened toward infinite possibility. And somewhere in Philadelphia, a 6-year-old girl slept peacefully, dreaming about dinosaurs and architecture and a future where anything was possible if you were brave enough to believe in transformation.